3, cutting of public shade trees, hearings, damages, and Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 15C, Scenic Road, and Section 250-24, the Bolton zoning bylaws, Scenic Roads. The Town of Bolton Tree Warden and Planning Board will hold a continuation of a joint public hearing regarding the application of Timothy Murphy regarding the proposed removal of trees identified as 1 8-inch diameter sugar maple, 1 12-inch diameter sugar maple, and 1 21-inch diameter white pine, and the removal of 20 feet of stone wall required to construct a driveway for property located on Wilder Road, Lot 3, identified by the assessor's map as 5.B Parcel 1. The public hearing will be held at Town Hall, 663 Main Street, Bolton, Mass. On Wednesday, May 10, 2017 at 7:30 p.m. Acts of 1908, Chapter 296, Section 3, public shade trees shall not be cut or removed in whole or in part except by the tree warden or his deputy, or by a person holding a license to do so from the tree warden, nor shall they be removed by the tree warden or his deputy or other person without a public hearing at a suitable time and place, after notice posted thereof in 2 or more public places in town and upon the tree, and after authority granted by the tree warden thereof. Whomever violates the provisions of this section shall forfeit not less than $5 nor more than $100 to the use of the town. Try to keep this painless and quick. If you want to come up, I guess you have a, do you have a new drawing for us?
I've got, I'm much better prepared this time around. The first time I thought this was just a formality. Second time,
So did I.
I thought it was going to be a formality too, but I'm ready to go. I'm very well prepared this time.
Alrighty.
So, sort of the history of this, originally I had planned on, John Mecklin has got this parcel, right?
Yeah.
We originally planned on having it here, and this is how we planned on laying out the lots. This is after the septic had been done over here. And then we started looking at it, and the road goes up as you go here. So the amount of elevation gain from here to the house is less than coming around here.
Yep.
But there'd have to be a big road cut right here to put it in. And we looked at it, and where you come in over here, it's pretty much level with the road. So John had had an A&R for this. He already, I think he got that approved. Did a whole bunch of legwork. We redesigned it so that I gave him this parcel instead, so that I could have the driveway here, and that made a ton of sense. That you're coming out at a flat area. So, a research of the bylaws. The planning board may adopt reasonable further standards relative to scenic roads not inconsistent with the bylaws and general laws. The big question is forcing me to have a shared driveway over here, or reshaping my lots so that I have a parallel driveway that goes out to Old Bay, is that reasonable? I think that's the question that we're dealing with here. I think it would bring down the property value of this price, of this lot, possibly by $10,000, something, I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of money.
I don't mean to cut you off. I mean, our real consideration, one of the things I heard the last time, we wanted to see a map showing, to try to put in perspective where the mailboxes are. I know that's one of the concerns of the folks. When I'm looking at these things, I'm looking at, are we taking it down an unreasonable amount of trees? Are we doing some clear cutting?
Yep.
If we've got a scenic road with a stone wall, are stones staying on
Right.
the site, are they being reused?
Yep.
Reusing portions of the stone wall that are weak, et cetera, et cetera. And then, frankly, I don't know how much this is in the code, but I'll be honest, I look at safety, I look at sight lines.
Yep.
Does it make sense to put in the normal course, a curb cut here?
Now, I'm gonna cover all this.
Okay, then I won't cut you off. Continue, but focus on that, because I don't want to belabor this. I think we already belabored it.
Okay. Well, all right. So, I mean, I don't want to waste anybody's time either, so this is, this is the driveway for my neighbors going to the Creighton Hamel area on Wilder Road. This is where the mailboxes are. This is my property line. Right? I have 13 feet between, there's a bollard right here at the edge of the mailbox. There's a pressure treated bollard. And it's 13 feet from this bollard to my property line.
The end of your line, the beginning of Mecklen's.
Right.
Yep.
And I talked to Erica, there's no offsets for a property line for a driveway, so I can put my driveway right on there.
Right.
Industry standards for driveways are 10 to 12 feet. So there's no question that I can get my driveway in here. Okay? So, the driveway, the one argument that was made for moving the mailboxes was that it was too steep over here. And you can see from this picture that moving the mailboxes over here wouldn't be a problem.
It's not a problem, it's easy, but it sounds like you don't need to.
We don't need to.
Do you
But
care
honestly,
one way or another?
Honestly, I think the people on Wilder Road would be better off with, I mean, they made one argument that they couldn't move the mailboxes here, right? Then they made a second argument that they need to pile snow here. But they're contradicting themselves because you can't pile snow here if it's too steep. All right, if they move the mailboxes over here, they can dump a ton of snow in here, right? Another thing that Danielle said was that she won't let her kids go across the street to get the mail, because it's too busy here. And if this is all snowed in and there's snowbanks here, there's no place to stand when you're waiting for traffic to go by.
Yep.
If there's a driveway right here that's plowed, right here, you've got a place to stand while you're waiting to get your mail.
Wait,
That's out of the way.
Would you propose to move it, or you think
It's really not my place, but I think moving the mailboxes, it's right across from the opening here. I think carving something out, moving the mailboxes over here, makes a ton of sense. You see how the driveway flares for these guys?
Yep.
It goes to 42 feet from, 24 feet probably.
Erica, legally, logistically, they're private property, but they're in a right-of-way. Can he move them?
I talked to the postmaster, and he said that everybody in the neighborhood has to be on board. You can move them; it's not a problem. But all the neighbors have to be on board with it.
That makes sense.
But so moving them will get them away. You wouldn't have the safety of the driveway when you're getting your mail. But you'd have a better place to throw snow, which was one of their arguments. And
I think my thought would be work it out with them and try and make the neighbors happy.
We could carve it out so that they've got a place to stand when they're getting their mail.
Yep. My first reaction is, if you need 10 to 12, and there really is no setback, and there's not, you're right. If you need 10 to 12, you've got 13. I'd leave it alone.
Okay.
But you know what? I would leave that to you to work out with the neighbors and try to come to an agreement that makes me happy.
Mark suggested a parallel driveway out to Old Bay, dividing up the lots. We had to change the lot lines when we did this. If I cut off a piece for this lot, I have to make it up somewhere to keep this lot.
I think it's a suggestion that's well intended. I think the reality is you have so much frontage there, and that area kind of scares me a little bit in terms of my safety proposition.
I can go into that in
I
detail.
go the other direction, and having gone through sat at both spots for a little bit. Wilder has a lot more traffic, and it really doesn't have significantly better sightlines than Old Bay.
Boy, I think it does.
So
It does have a lot of traffic. People drive like nuts.
So what I did was, I went out with my mom, and I had her sit at both driveway locations, right? And I walked until I couldn't see her anymore. And then I had a measuring wheel, and I measured the distance back to where I could see her. And I got the different measurements for the different places. By far the shortest one is coming from the west going over Old Bay.
Yeah.
But you got to take into consideration the speeding. you know, how fast people are going when they come up to that, right? So I bought a stopwatch, and I timed how long it took from when you could see a car until it was directly across the street from the driveway.
Okay.
Coming west from Twin Springs,
Yep.
going over Old Bay,
Yep.
it all was, all the cars were between 4 and 5 seconds, and average 4.5 seconds, right? Coming Old Bay east, it didn't, there's tons of space. It was 11 to 14 seconds, averaging 12.5 seconds, you know? Wilder Road from the west, it was between 6 and 11 seconds, averaging 8.5 seconds.
Okay.
Wilder Road from the east was between 7 and 10 seconds, again, averaging 8.5 seconds. And people haul ass on that road. And, you know, Martha Remington's recommendation, it's not up to you guys, but Martha Remington's recommendation to lower the speed limit on that stretch, I mean, it's 25 when you first come off 117. And then it goes to like 45 all the way down to Twin Springs. And the driveways across the street are worse sight lines than what the driveway that I'm proposing.
We can't fix the sins of the past, we can only keep sins from going.
Well, I think that, you know, considering
I mean, no,
changing the speed
that's the
limit
reality,
makes
so-
sense.
Well, that may be, but that's a separate, that's not our purview. So
I agree,
you know,
but
talk to the
like,
selectmen about that if you
people
want to. but-
do go way too fast
Yeah.
there. And these numbers are skewed by people really speeding on Wilder Road, you know?
To me, people go way too fast every place.
Yeah, well,
I try to look for
still,
where are the straightaways.
the
where are
average
the side-
time from car to when you see it till when it's in front of the driveway is twice on Wilder Road than what it is on Old Bay. You know?
When I looked at it, I thought sight lines were better on Wilder.
So just one other comment too. I did talk to Chief Nelson and Harold Brown today about this. They had gone out and did a site visit per the request of Tim.
Okay.
And both weighed in and said they preferred the driveway coming off of Wilder Road. They thought the site distances were better. So, I mean, they said neither were great, but they preferred the Wilder Road.
So not only that, but my engineer said that. Mark Case, who's a neighbor, said the same thing, coming over that
The
knoll.
reality too, the planning board tries to the best of our ability to plan for the future. We know Mr. Mecklen's around the corner. To me, it makes sense to do one on each road. And I think his makes all the sense in the world on that road.
We also know there's gonna be another drive, I mean, there's gonna be a driveway in this horrendous spot anyway, so, you know, in the not too distant future, I'm sure, so, you know, I mean, it's not like we're preventing a driveway from going in, you know, where you're.
But you're limiting your liability, the town's liability, because you've got the police chief of police, the DPW chief, head, tree warden.
We just heard, we don't need to reiterate it, yeah, it's good to hear it,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
okay.
Do we have comments from the audience? Anybody want to chime in, some thoughts?
Yeah,
Just
certainly.
Say who you are.
Oh, my name's Ron Mack, 167 Wilder.
Thank you.
So the question I had was with regard to previous discussions around shared driveways, shared drive. And I'm not sure what's being presented up there, to tell you the truth.
Just a traditional driveway, not a shared.
Just a traditional-
He's still on the original plan, one
So
drive.
this discussion is going to continue for some time where we get to the alternative.
I'd like to wrap up the discussion. We've belabored it for quite a few meetings, really.
So I guess the question is a shared driveway to be presented? And if not, why?
It's not to be presented, and it's not to be presented, in my mind, because of the huge amount of frontage that he enjoys on Wilder Road.
Yes.
Because of the sight lines on that road, because of the straight nature of that road. I think it makes all the sense in the world to cut it on Wilder. The chief agrees, the DPW agrees. That's my opinion.
So the question is, okay, so has a shared driveway been presented, proposal been presented?
Again, no.
No. So does the planning board have the option of requesting, or does it say one should be presented, or saying it may or may not be presented? For discussion of...
So there's
for discussion purposes, we did explore it. We've had this, I think this is the fourth hearing. Either the first or the second, I can't remember which. Yeah, it was not the third. We had a discussion about it, we talked about it. And what spawned that discussion, in my mind, there's an existing cart path on Old Bay. So it seemed like it was something, at least, it was the second meeting, it seemed like it was something that should be explored. The reality is, that was kind of a good faith request. Does this make sense, Mr. Applicant, to put it there? You've got a partially improved road there already. The reality is, the applicant doesn't want to, number one. And number two, I don't see any overwhelming reason why it's safer or it's a better idea to cut into Old Bay versus Wilder. The discussion we typically have, again, here with these type of requests is, are we taking down too many trees? Are we disturbing a scenic road and its stone wall unnecessarily and without, some reasonable mitigation? And then for me, is it safe? Does it make sense? Is there an alternative? And is the alternative a better idea? We've had a lot of conversations about opinions that, it might be safer on the other road, do cars go faster on the other road, are the sight lines better? And you know what, at the end of the day, I think it's probably a little subjective. I think there could be good arguments made on both
I
sides.
have a question. If the safety is yes and no, maybe, pros and cons,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You've got a scenic road, and again, 3 cuts, and let's say, I don't know whether it's 9 or 12 trees or 15 trees total, and if it's 20 feet, 20, 40, 60 feet of cuts and stone walls, the sum total is significant as opposed to just focusing on the 20 and the 3 trees. Now, 1 cut would be better than 3. I believe that 2 would be better than 3. And I think I'm hearing you're going down a path of 3's okay.
Well, where are the 3? I mean, we've got, what are you counting as the 3?
He's talking about...
One is in existence, 1 previous, 1's on the table, and
Oh, he's talking about Wilder.
Wilder, yeah.
On Wilder, we've got what we call Lot 3
Yeah.
that's on the table.
Yes,
We've got a lot,
east of that, that was
Thank you.
east of that, previously built on.
correct, the newer house.
So actually, a lot...
Mecklen, the third, the one to the left, the one kind of in the corner of Old Bay and Wilder.
Yeah. So he was...
We're of the mind, and the gentleman came in, who owns that lot, last week. We're of the mind that gets cut onto Old Bay, not onto Wilder. So it would be 2. And I agree with you. I mean, all else equal, if we can spread these out onto numerous streets, the less curb cuts, the better. The reality is the town is something like 55 or 58% built out. We're gonna see more cuts. We just want to do it as reasonable as possible. There are areas in town, we always come back to this as an example. There's an area that's very close to my own house, where there's a kind of a shotgun barrel driveway, 2 very long and immediately adjacent driveways that probably should have been a shared driveway. It was permitted a long time ago, and it was probably a mistake. We look at that and say to ourselves, where does it make sense to cut a little bit less than otherwise, cut on another street, and kind of balance it out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You had your hand up there?
Yes, Danielle Spicer, 195 Wilder Road. Just a couple questions. So was there a plan, I guess that was submitted to show how the driveways will work for all of your lots?
Yeah, sure.
Or is
I
it-
mean, this is my existing cart path, right? So, I've already cut the trees to move it off this lot, so that's the one. Then this is
But this,
coming in off of Wilder.
I guess, no, sorry, I'm confused. So I thought Lot 3 you wanted to come off of Wilder.
Yeah.
So-
I was showing, Mark's idea to have parallel driveways here, which is
Well, if you don't want shared, I mean, which...
Well, I guess what I was asking
Right,
is there
so-
a plan that shows the driveway you want off of Wilder Road for lot
Yes.
3,
Yep.
and how you're gonna deal with this. Basically, I thought it was to,
Driveway comes in here, and
but it's not
look,
showing all, a driveway for all of
There's
the
nothing that
lots.
shows into the future, whereas the driveway
Okay, I
on the
thought
other lot.
that
goes.
was
Well, he's not,
required.
I'm not changing it. This is, there's already driveway here for this lot. If I develop this lot, which I have no plans to,
It's
there's
got
already
a
a driveway here.
today. In addition to his own driveway that services the existing house. So that's already there. I mean, that was my idea at first. If you want to try and do a shared off of that, there, to service that.
Okay, so.
The reality is, we can't really make him do that. And
No,
I don't think
I
it
was
is
just
fair
asking,
to
because
me.
part of the driveway, I thought bylaws was that if they own multiple lots, you need to show a plan of how you would be doing this, so.
so
Yeah.
the wording actually is, so there's a couple of situations. If they are developing both at the same time, so it says, in situations where an adjacent, or an applicant is requesting multiple single and/or shared driveways to access adjacent continuous lots, the planning board shall consider and may mandate one or more of the following adjustments can change. And it says two single driveways become a shared. Oh, that's not necessarily, the situation right now is, the next one is, if an applicant is in control of several adjacent contiguous lots and/or backland lots, but only prepares a driveway for a single lot, the planning board shall request that information be provided as to the plans for access to the remaining lots in question. It's not requiring plans, it's just saying once, we could request.
I think
And we
that,
probably should talk about and consider, which is
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's what Brownie,
wait, if you look at that verbiage, shall request, that sounds pretty clear to me, as opposed to probably, yeah, we should, might talk.
We
about it.
did. I want to be clear. I mean, we did. We've been talking about that very topic.
Harold said
And have they been presented?
that
Sure.
when I have no plans to develop this lot, you can't consider them together. The planning board has you cannot force me to take this lot into consideration with this lot.
I don't disagree. And I think the gentleman arrangement is, let's talk about it, which is what we've been doing in my mind.
Ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Like, I've wasted so much time on this, you wouldn't believe it, and I have a job.
Which sometimes is important. I mean, we need to, hopefully not belabor, but we need to discuss this. We need to think into the future. I'm not strongly disappointed that we use the time, but I think at a certain point, enough is enough. We listen to the wise folks in town, we use our own brain, and we make a decision. There's no absolutely perfect solution here, but at the end of the day, I keep coming back to, you own and control
370 feet of frontage.
Yeah, and it's not twisting and turning, and it's not coming up crests of hills. It's probably not as good as it can get, but it's pretty
I
good.
mean, I can
Better
go
than
into
a lot of other
more,
ones.
like, I can keep going, I mean, this is way safer.
So I would entertain a motion to close the hearing, but one of the things that I would want to reiterate is work with the neighbors in terms of the mailbox.
That's what I've been doing, and that's why I was
That's what I
happy
was
to
gonna
do
ask.
this
Understood.
from the beginning, but I mean, it's going too far.
One last question.
I was just gonna ask, actually, just with regard to the mailboxes, I mean, I don't take out the snow from them, one of our neighbors does, so I'd like to have him in on the discussion, but if you can leave them, great. He had strong objections to moving them further up, because
And the
he
reality
clears
is,
it out,
I don't mean to
so.
cut you off, he doesn't have to move them, so
Yeah,
that's
so
why
if
I
he
feel
does, that's
there's
what I'm
enough room
thinking.
not to. So my comment is, work with the neighbors. If
You guys have an
want
opportunity to move the mailboxes, I think they'd be better off in the different location, and I'll move them for you for free. And they're all tipping over as it is,
I think you're right, but if there is contention, my point is,
Yeah.
they don't want to move, you have the room to do it.
Yeah.
I would just say, I don't
I'm
wanna
glad.
speak for all the neighbors, that's
Sure,
all I
sure,
was just
sure.
gonna say.
Sure.
So one other point before the
Yep.
board closes the hearing. So in your packet is an email from Mark Case. He was unable to attend tonight, but he does have to weigh in as tree warden. So essentially, the email says that he has no problem with the removal of the 3 trees.
Okay, he mentioned that at the first portion of the hearing. We
He
talk
did,
about
but
trees.
because I knew the hearing might be closing tonight, I had him also provide it to the
Okay.
record. So,
Okay,
and just, he wanted to disclose, which Tim had said earlier, he is in a butter, so.
oh, that's right, yeah.
I mean, the last thing I just want to say is, he has the frontage on Wilder. It doesn't make sense to me to have to go back through another lot, to another road. It's just weird to have the frontage on Wilder, 350 feet of it, have to go back to another road. And safety-wise, in my opinion, from going out there, it looks like Wilder is safer than Old Bay.
And I'd like to add just one more comment too. As town planner, I typically review the driveway applications on behalf of the board, and what you've submitted is sufficient information. There's nothing more that I would be requiring to review in a driveway application.
Thanks.
Make a motion to close the hearing.
Second. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Erica, do we want to take a vote on applicant's proposal?
Yeah, the scenic road for the removal of the 3 trees and then the removal of the 20 feet of stone wall and I assume you're relocating it, Tim, on your property?
Yeah,
Is that
yep.
okay?
Yep, it's kind of falling apart where in front, where the driveway is anyway, so
Okay.
we'll reshape it in the areas beside it.
Is that 2 separate motions?
No, I think it's one
You
motion.
do this one.
Okay, someone move it, so. I will make a motion to approve the application to remove the 3 trees in question and to remove the 20 feet of stone wall and reuse the stones in the remaining wall. Good?
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, Tim.
And,
Supposed to be the steward of the town, yeah.
I believe I am being steward of the town.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I
Very
agree with what
disappointing.
comes in. No, that's your opinion, and you're welcome to it.
I put together a draft in thinking that the board may close this hearing. I did put together a draft decision, which you can review. And if you agree with what's written there, you can sign. And then I'll have Mark Case come in and sign it.
We have to vote on this, is all part of what we just did.
It's generic language, this is what you guys typically sign for scenic road.
I didn't post it, I'm not Hispanic.
So procedurally, you don't sign it?
I don't know.
Erica,
Does Mark sign if he
Voted against it?
in the negative?
You know what, we can update the, yeah, don't sign it,
Okay.
that's clear, that way.
So we're a little bit late, but first order of business, short-term rentals discussion, discuss Airbnb.
All set? All right.
Thanks, Tim.
Hey, have a mint.
Erica, do you want to give us a little bit of background, and then maybe we'll ask our zoning enforcement officer to give us a little bit of background?
So essentially, the reason that this is before the planning board tonight is I did receive a couple of emails with concerns, complaints about an Airbnb that has popped up on Kettle Hole Road. In that process, the owner had come forward and had requested a business certificate from the town. So in reviewing a business certificate, our building inspector has to sign off on them. So he reviewed the Airbnb and presented this letter to the owner, signed off on the business certificate. And essentially, the neighbors asked if they could come before planning board and just present their concerns, comments to you guys. So that's kind of where we're at.
Are the owners here too?
Here.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a little bit of background about how you looked at it, maybe what your decision was?
Sure.
Come on up if you
Yeah.
want.
Thank you,
Introduce
David.
yourself for the
Good
audience.
evening, everyone. I'm Mike Savageau. I'm the building official and zoning officer for the town of Bolton. I'm gonna kind of come at an angle so I'm not coming back towards anyone. When we evaluate zoning compliance, we have to look at primarily the use of the structure that's gonna be used or the land that's gonna be used. The bylaw will specifically tell you exactly what you can do. If it's not in the bylaw, you can't do it. It has to be in the bylaw for even a special permit to be granted. You can't get a special permit, so to speak, just because you'd like to put an amusement park in the center of town. The bylaw has to allow the permit granting authority to actually give you that special permit for that specific use that's designated in a bylaw. Just kind of an overview of zoning. So when I look at something, somebody comes in and says, well, I want to do this. And I say, well, we've got to first look at zoning compliance. First, I have to evaluate what the use is under the building code, because that's what triggers what you're going to build and how you're going to build it. And after that, I look at it and I say, okay, this is what the use is, this is how you have to build it. This Airbnb concept of people renting their houses, we see it online now. It's relatively new because it's online. You know, if it wasn't online, my gut feeling is everybody's kind of doing it. You go to the Cape, you rent somebody's house for a week. I mean, that's a given. That happens in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts every day, every week at Cape Cod. They have to follow the same code that we have to follow. So I look at this and I say, okay, how do I determine what this use is? Somebody's renting their house out and they're gonna have a bunch of people in there. How do we regulate that, and what is that real use? So what I did was, I first go to the building code, and I try to evaluate the use under the building code, so that I can tell them how to get that use into compliance, if they are allowed that use under the bylaw. So when we look at the building code, when we look at single-family homes, we look at an R3 use group. Single-family homes is designated as an R3 use group. And this is the residential use group section of the building code, right here. So what I do is I look at that, and it says residential use group. Residential group R includes, among others, the use of buildings or structures or portions thereof for sleeping purposes when not classified as an institutional group I use. So institutional group I will be somebody that's incarcerated, they're in a jail, they need to be taken out, you have to have a key, so somebody has to let them out, somebody has to escort them out. Institutional is also considered daycare centers, which are actually under 2 years, 9 months of age or less. That's an institutional use group, even though it's a daycare. We have to look at the building code as an institutional use. When you get into above 2 years and 9 months, it's not daycare. It's called educational use, and then we have to look at the requirements for educational use. So I look at the house, we'll be dealing now with a single-family home. We know a single-family home is in the residential use group. We know a single-family home is an is an R3 use group under the building code. R3 use group, residential occupancies where the occupants are primarily permanent in nature and not classified as an R1, an R2, an R4, or an institutional use group. So if you read down on, I'm not going to read all of those, but very quickly, an R1, and this is where the trigger point is, for the sake of this conversation, an R1 use group, sleeping units where the occupants are primarily transient in nature. They don't stay for any length of time. So you're going into a boarding house, a transient boarding house, and they specify it's a boarding house, but it's transient. You can have a hotel, transient, you're there for a week, you're there overnight, you're there for 2 weeks, you might be there for a month, but you leave. And then and generally the trigger on that is 30 days. Usually 30 days or less is considered transient in nature. So then you come up with motels. That's your R1 use group. Your R2 groups, R2 residential use is sleeping units, occupancies containing sleeping units or more than 2 dwelling units, where they're primarily permanent in nature. That's your apartment house, your boarding house, your convent, your dormitory, your fraternities, your hotel, your monasteries. Okay? And you get into all of those. So then you go down and you find that the R3 use group, like they're renting houses at the Cape. So what I do is I look at R3 use group, I know that's a single family and it's a two-family home, primarily permanent in nature. So I look at that code. Now, when we get down to, just for sake of discussion, let's say an R4 use group, it says residential occupancy shall include buildings arranged for occupancy as residential care assisted living facilities, including, and here's a little trigger, this is an R4 use group, including more than 5, but not more than 16, excluding staff. That's an R4 use group. I'm going to say it again. For occupancies as residential living facilities, including more than 5. So I read that and I go, well, it's not an R4.
This is
But
the
it could be.
Commonwealth, or this is the?
This is
town
the
of Bolton?
Commonwealth.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the town of Bolton has no specific building code.
Okay,
It just has its bylaw.
thanks.
So basically, when I look at this, the more than 5 triggers. So that's an R4. So 5 or less is what? I say to myself in my evaluation. I look at the other use groups, 5 or less, doesn't trigger any of those, so what does it become? It becomes the R3, because the R3 is where residential occupancies, where the occupants are primarily permanent in nature, primarily permanent, and not classified as group 1, 2, 4, or I. That's the single-family home, 5 or less. So I said, well, it seems to me that 5 or less people in a single-family home, and I've made that determination before, in town, there was a woman who wanted to have to do conferences, knitting conferences, and on Hudson Road. And she wanted to take the single-family home and have a ton of people over there, which is a lot more than 5 people, she expressed. And I told her that the cutoff was 5 people. When you get more than 5 people, another trigger, under Mass General Law, Section 26H, which the town has adopted, for the purposes of this section, this is for sprinklering buildings. So you do not currently have to sprinkle a single-family or a two-family dwelling. If you have 3 townhouses connected together, like a triplex, you have to sprinkle it. So this is the sprinkler law, which leads me to another determination as to where does the sprinkler system kick in when you got a single-family home and they're renting to more than 5 people. Because this says, if you have, the fire chief makes the determination under this law, that if you have adequate water, you have the availability of water to put a sprinkler system in, it says, for the purposes of sprinklering that house, for the purpose of this section, a lodging house, this is where we are now going to jump from the R3 use group to like an R1. You remember the lodging house, the hotel, the motel? It says, for the purpose of this section, the sprinkler section of the law, lodging house or boarding house shall mean a house where lodgings are let to 6 or more persons, not within the second degree of kindred to the person conducting it, but shall not include a fraternity house or dormitory, rest homes, or group residences licensed and regulated among the Commonwealth. So this tells me 6 or more. If you let to 6 or more, that means you're up to 5, you're okay. You stay with 5 people, you're not considered by definition under the law, for the building code purposes, you're not considered to be a lodging house if you're 5 or less. 6 or more, you trigger a lodging house, you now trigger that single family to be sprinkled with a full sprinkler system. So there's how I made my determination relative to that. I look at the Massachusetts amendments to this code, and basically it still goes on and points in the direction of R3 use groups. Again, primarily permanent in nature, not classified as 1, 2, 4, or institutional. Yeah, it's R3, single family
Can I
home.
interrupt for 1 second? When you keep saying primarily permanent in nature, what are you referring to?
Well, primarily permanent in nature. You're gonna find situations where somebody leases out their house at the Cape
Do you mean the people living there? or
That's
sorry,
correct.
can you
The
introduce
use,
yourself?
the general use.
And
He's
state
talking
your-
about the zone,
Oh.
the use.
Could you introduce yourself and
Okay,
state where you live?
I'm Cindy Jaquith, I'm 171 Kettle Hall.
Mhm.
I just didn't, I want to make sure I understood
Yeah,
that.
primarily permanent in nature has some trigger to it also, because if you're leasing that house all year, I might have to look at that and say, hey, well, that's no different than a boarding house. But they're telling me in the building code, you treat it like a single-family home, if it's 5 or less. That gets into that whole thing with 401 Main Street, which we don't need to get into.
So
but a little
whether
bit-
it's, whether it's owner occupied, or leased for a year, or leased for 6 months, or leased on a real short-term basis, like a weekend, if it's 5 or less, it's R3.
It's an R3 use group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even
And I
though-
have to treat it for
Even though they're not
single-family use.
primarily permanent?
Well, I mean, that's a hard thing, that's a hard thing for someone to determine. I mean, I did have a neighbor that called me up and talked to me about it, and as I mentioned, you know, you can take videos, you know, you gotta help the zoning officer sometimes. So, I mean, if somebody saw 6 cars overnight over there, then you would need to know that 6 people are there. If they're not the occupant of the home, you have 6 cars, they're acting as a lodging house.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Hirschberger,
Yeah.
I live at 158 Kettle Hall Road, Wheatsville.
Yeah.
And there are often more than 5 cars there. I mean, often over 10 cars there overnight on a regular basis.
All right, that's a lot, okay.
No,
Actually,
regular
yeah,
basis?
no.
No, it's not. I live right across the street.
Hey, this is not gonna be a kangaroo court.
Yeah.
You need to direct your questions and comments to me.
I actually live right across the street, and I see that all the time.
Me too.
So, there are a lot of kids in the neighborhood riding their bikes up and down the street. And, you know, I actually even called the police one time because I was very concerned with visibility on the street.
And what did they say? When
They rode up and down and they said it was borderline.
And that's not what the police report said.
I talked to the police officer.
Oh, I got it right here. And it says right here that the Kettle Hall resident called to report concerns about the number of vehicles parked at our neighbors.
Sir, could you introduce
I'm
yourself?
Bob McDonald.
Direct it to me,
Bob
please.
McDonald, 163
Thank you.
Kettle Hall Road. The officer who responded found that the cars were not obstructing traffic.
She told me that it was borderline. She
I'm
stood in
just
my
stating
driveway.
what's
She
on,
stood in
I'm
my
just stating
driveway.
what's on the police log.
Okay, I mean,
And it also was mentioned that someone mentioned that it was numerous times. I Googled, I could not find any other time that police were called there.
Erica, do you know of any police reports filed on this property?
I honestly haven't reached out to the police department, so I could do that, but I don't know offhand.
Well, okay, I'll respond to that.
I want to clarify. So I didn't realize that. Permanent in nature really plays a big role.
Well, I mean, it's listed in here in several areas, and that's because that transient thing in the past codes is always referenced 30 days or less.
Permanent nature is is not used for this specific case, it's in general to determine if you're R1, R2, R3, or R4.
Basically, yes, because you could be in R1, transient nature, under 30 days. You're not permanent in nature,
Say
you're
that again.
transient.
Say that again.
30 days or less, and you're considered transient in nature.
Yep.
So,
But you can be R3 and 30 days and less?
No,
No.
no,
you're not, you'd be, you'd
If
be...
you're transient, then you're not R3 anymore.
right.
Right. If it's used, and it would take some research and some, you know, probably some legal advice. If somebody was renting a single-family home all year round to someone else,
Yep.
the question becomes for zoning enforcement under the issue at hand is, are they, and generally this is how it's done,
Yep.
I'm just leasing my house to another family.
Correct.
I go to the Cape, I'm leasing it to this family for 2 months, 3 months.
We're on the same
Right.
wavelength, and I guess my question is, if you are under a lease, if you are renting your house, does the zoning enforcement differ as compared to a real short-term type of an arrangement? I did not think it did.
No, and I don't believe it does. I don't believe it
Okay,
does.
that's the key
I
question.
believe as
Because
long
if
as
you can lease
anyone
your house for
stays,
6 months, then you can do
why couldn't you?
Airbnb.
Why couldn't you? And who's gonna police that? Who's
But
gonna,
if the code is different, if the code really makes a distinction and says, if it's
30 days.
not a leased operation, if it's not if it is more short-term than X of a duration, of a continuous duration, then it falls into a different bucket, and it is regulated in a different way.
Right, it
That's
could,
the
it could
crux of this
technically
conversation.
become the lodging house,
Yeah.
because it's acting, as I said to the, is it
My
your
wife.
property? I spoke with your wife, as I said, and I forgot her name, I'm sorry.
Sharon.
Sharon, yeah, right. And I spoke to Sharon, and I said, you know, if you go 5 or less people, just as I told the people that own the red house over by the pond on Hudson Road,
Yeah.
that wanted to do the quilting
Yeah.
thing, 5 or less, I can't view it under the building code as anything different than a single-family home. Right? If you're leasing it to 5 or less to the second kid.
You should read, for the benefit of the audience, anybody who hasn't read it, your letter. We should read that out loud. Because I thought, that's how I understood it. And I thought for a
Well, that's
second I
good.
understood it differently. The way I had understood it, which
Yeah.
sounds like it is a correct way of understanding it. I can't find a problem with your determination.
No, I mean, I called the state, actually, I even went as far as to call the state, I called the department, I called the guys that write the building codes, that will tell me if I'm on the right track with that code requirement. They told me, because they do not have, this is the state, they've cut back, they do not have a code official anymore, the Board of Building Regulations and Standards, who are our gurus that write the codes. They told me to confer with my local state inspector that does this region. I called the state inspector, I told him what I felt. I said, everything I'm reading under the sprinkler law, everything that I'm reading under the use group is telling me 5 or less people, and I don't treat that as anything different than a single-family home. And he said, absolutely right.
But
I'll get to you, I promise.
the only question that I have, transient in nature though, is that keeps coming up in the discussion. I mean, Airbnb is in and of itself transient.
Well, I mean, it's going to be evaluated, because I did bring this up when it first came up, and that was, must have been over a half a year ago. And I went to my monthly district meeting, and I brought up the whole Airbnb thing. And the state inspector, who 6 months later I talked to about my determination, he said, yeah, it's relatively new. It's relatively new out there, Airbnb.
I want to just give everybody a chance. She said her hand up there.
Yeah, I'd just like to, Mary Battis,
Thank
Kettle
you.
Hole Road,
Thank you.
78 Kettle Hole Road. My questions are not being familiar with all the zoning and stuff, but I do know that Bolton doesn't let you do much of anything anywhere. So is it more easier handled in some residential zoning thing, that it's a primarily residential area? And so you say, this is residential. It's one thing if you rent your house for a year to someone. I think this 5
But
and under.
you're on the key topic, I think. Is it? Is it any different than renting your house for a
Airbnb
year?
is like a hotel, and I have a
I'm not
hotel
talking
down
about
the street.
sentiment and feelings. I'm talking about.
No,
the
it's a
code.
hotel.
I
And
think if
my
you have a
question
lease-
is, my main
Yeah, you
concern,
can be
because
tenant will. That doesn't hold.
Yeah. It's-
because I just thought that there was something already in place that would make all this other stuff that's
Right.
irrelevant, because 5 and under, I don't care if there's one person there, I have concerns. I also understand that it's your property, and that's why I haven't complained for a year. I actually had some friends who rented the house, so I knew it was there, and I didn't want to say anything. I made a call, and you weren't there, and no one knew, so I never got around to calling back, because I believe you should have the right to do what you want to do. But if someone's there and if there's something happening and there's robberies on Fox Run, what a great place to run back to. And does Captain, Nelson know that what's going on and that this is there? And then, I drive by and I see all the cars, they're not there a lot, there's some, but there's, sometimes there's like 12.
against that?
But sometimes there's like 12. You know what? But again, is there an easier way of this other?
And since.
Guys, we gotta do this in an orderly way. Everybody can talk, but we gotta direct it towards me. Thank you.
So I just thought there might be an easier law in the town laws, because if we can't put a Dunkin' Donuts or a McDonald's or something, I think you can't put a hotel.
To add to that point though, I mean, I think it does come back to transient. It's transient in nature. It's not, I mean, I think that's what's important.
And even if it's one person, sorry.
Well, the transient, you're getting into R1, and they specify, and I can show you how they specify that, so that you get a true representation. When I reference the word transient,
And you're saying less than 30 days.
right here, boarding house, transient in nature, hotel, transient in nature, that's an R1 use group, a motel, transient in
But why
nature.
isn't this, why doesn't that fall into that then?
Because our 3 use group says primarily permanent. If you lease your house 2 weekends or 2 weeks, right? If you did it 2 weeks out of a 30-day month, you're basically splitting it. So to me, that would be a coin flip. Are you permanent nature or are you transient nature? They're saying primarily permanent because they know people stay in single-family homes, you know? And if you lease a house over at the Cape, you might be doing it for a month, you might be doing it for a week. But on those off seasons, 6 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year, nobody's leasing their house. It's owned by anyone else that has the right to leave their house unoccupied, fly to Florida, and stay down there for a year.
So in theory, if it's transient in and out, and it's more than 26 weeks out of the year, then
I could call it a lodging house probably,
Okay.
because
Yeah, you're
it's
right.
acting. It's like 401 Main Street. I say a duck, if it's a duck, you know, it looks like a duck, acts like a duck, it's a duck. You know, over there, they got a farm. Some people don't
Well,
believe it's a
okay,
true farm.
Don't go into
Okay, like that,
401.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I was gonna respond to that, because, I mean, relative to 401, the issue that came up was owner occupied. That became the kind of the key point to that, which then brought around the compromise that they came to, was you're not occupying
You're
it as
mixing a
an
couple of, I
owner.
don't want to interrupt, but you're mixing, the owner occupied only has bearing if you're going for a home occupation, which on that particular instance up here, and I know we don't want to get into that discussion, they were considering the potential of that being a home occupation, which in my
Okay,
opinion,
I guess my point is, one of the issues when you're saying, you know, the person back here saying it's a hotel and such, what makes it that way, why it's different than leasing your house for a year? There's nobody with any skin in the game. And the thing
How's
is,
it different from a lease for a year?
because then you know that I mean, if somebody's living there for a year, I'm gonna know them pretty well. You're gonna see them every day, they're gonna be talking to them, you know?
I've been here a year and a half, you haven't ever talked to me.
Well,
live there.
we have tried,
Yeah.
Okay, that's another item I'd like to discuss.
we
too.
have tried, but I'm still talking.
She's put her-
I'm still
Well,
talking right now. So it's my turn. Okay, we have tried. I have, last year, we never were aware that this was made into an Airbnb. It was never discussed with the neighbors at all. I found out because I had to call the police at 2 AM on the night of, when the fair is here, the Bolton Fair, that weekend. And there was a huge, I would only call it a frat type party with like 24, 25 people over there, and it was insane. It was insane. So the police did come over, and by the time they got there, which was, I think I called them around 1, and by the time they got there around 2, because they said there were so many issues with the rest of the town, which I assume was Bolton Fair related, I don't know. All of a sudden, it quieted down, and when the police came down the road, so that was interesting. The next day, I confronted the people who were there, and I said, "Who are you?" Because we thought it might be his kids having a party over there. We had no idea. We thought this was family people that were staying there all the time. And they said, "Oh, this is an Airbnb." And I kind of just put them on notice that, I'm gonna let you know right now, that better not happen again. And they were all very drawn up short. It was really raucous scene. And there's no way to, who's responsible for this? There's no one to call, there's no one to enforce anything, and this just goes on. And there's
Yeah, well,
cars
yes,
up
there
and down the
is.
street.
That's my job. How many people have contacted me about the Airbnb other than this gentleman? And that was months ago.
Well, I
And I've never
actually,
got another call
I
since, and I
actually did
told, and
contact-
I did ask you to contact me and take pictures if you wanted to, and I would come down there.
but that,
once.
I
I got a
did,
phone call once.
I started this a long time ago.
Yeah, we've been-
I initiated it through the Board of Selectmen, I initiated it through the Board of Health, you know this. I initiated it, I even tried to get the planning board, I've been trying to get this meeting for months. So this, I have been in contact with people in the town. I wasn't aware that you needed to be involved until I got information from Kevin and Erica, and then it was seemingly getting handled to a certain extent. But the point is, we have no one to contact. They're not there. They don't know how many people are staying at their house. I guarantee they don't, because there have been times when it's been very, very crowded over there. And they may not know that, they may think only a few people are renting it. I don't know.
If it's a real noise nuisance, if there are crimes happening, if there's a disturbance,
Well, I think being up at 2
Can I finish?
AM when you have
Can I
to work
finish?
is a bit of a crime.
call the police.
We
I mean,
did.
If there's a legal issue.
We
then
did, but it's the
similar
idea
to
that
a
we have to be
okay.
constantly enforcing it. We're constantly on guard. It's a constant, non-ending thing. And I've even gone over there to try to talk to the owners. They're never there. They are never there. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. I don't know.
Well, maybe if I read my letter, they'll have a true understanding of where there's a determination that has been made, so you need to deal with that determination. Now, you can have all the ill feelings about what's going on in the neighborhood, and you shouldn't have that many people over there, and I can respect all that. But I've made a determination that 5 or, and I ran this by the state, and I've got my documentation here, 5 or less people, as far as I'm concerned, for your zoning purposes, it's a single-family home. Congregate living in your bylaw is not allowed.
People, including children?
It doesn't matter. It could be, it's just as the letter states.
you're
Did you
right.
get a copy of the
You're right.
letter? Did it
I
tell you if
did,
you want?
because I've already seen that since the letter's gone out, so that's why I'm asking that question.
5, it doesn't say what age they have to be. 5 or less people, and in my opinion, and from what I got from the state inspector, and from what I'm reading, that to me is a single-family home, treated like a single-family home. How do you know how many people are renting rooms in the accessory apartments that we allow in
Can
Bolton?
I ask you a question?
I don't know.
So,
Right.
Well, that's not my business.
Can I ask you- so bed and breakfast hotels, that's considered
That would be-
congregate living? Is that-
No, that would be considered,
I'm trying,
that would be.
I'm just looking through the table.
That would be,
here.
no, your congregate living definition actually is probably off the mark. Your
Right.
definition of congregate living is 55 and older. That should be assisted living.
I'm just trying to look for.
You've got a wrong
I'm trying to look-
definition.
I'm trying to look,
What would,
hold
what
on,
would have been?
hold on, I'm trying to look in the table of uses
Yep.
for a reference to lodging.
I believe there's a motel, hotel.
Yeah,
I'm looking for
yeah,
it.
that would be R1.
Under residential, where is it?
Not residential,
Right here.
it's its own use in there.
What
It may
page?
be
Where?
lodging,
Are you looking at the table?
the table.
And I'm in a better.
Okay, you're gonna get a single-family accessory apartment, new 2-family dwelling we allow, conversion to a 2-family, no, multi-family dwelling, no, congregate living, no.
I don't see any
No,
reference to,
no, you kinda don't allow it.
well, I don't see it, and.
You know, motel hotels are up here,
Where?
Right,
right here. Motel, hotel, no.
it's under mercantile.
Yeah, they're basically, it's the same use group. See, in your bylaw, it doesn't say you can have a lodging house, so you can't have one. So you have a single family with 5 or less, it's a single family.
Yeah.
If you go more than 5, you're not a lodging house.
But if
They're
they're
not using it as a family. They're using it. That's not what they're doing.
The thing that I would,
Read your determination. That would be.
All right, I'm gonna read what I determined. Okay, rental of single-family home for 163 Kettle Pole Road. Dear Sharon, please be advised that I have reviewed your application for zoning and building code compliance for the renting of your single-family home located at 163 Kettle Hole Road. I have determined that the rental of your home is allowed and the property would maintain a single-family home status under the building code and zoning regulations of the town, provided that the rental of the home is restricted to no more than 5 individuals at a time. The Massachusetts State Building Code, 8th edition, section 310, limits the rental of the property to not more than 5 persons at a time. The property maintains a single-family status if in compliance with this requirement. If the property were to be leased to more than 5 people at one time, then the property would be considered to be a lodging house, which is not allowed under the town of Bolton's bylaw, and would be in violation of the bylaws, which could lead to fines and possible court action. Mass General Law, Chapter 148, Section 26H also limits the use of the property to not more than 5 persons, not within the second degree of the owner of the property. Additionally, if the property were to be leased to more than 5 persons, then it would be in violation of the building code, which could possibly be subject you to liability due to the non-compliance of the building code life safety requirements. While the building code and the zoning bylaws would both be violated under this condition, the zoning violation alone would prohibit the use in the residential district. In other words, you can't have a lodging house in the residential district. The state building inspector has concurred with my opinion as to the status of the use of the property. If you have any other questions in regards, please feel free to contact me. You have a right, and this is the key, you have a right to appeal my determination to the zoning board of appeals. So this is, for all intents and purposes, your zoning gospel right now from your zoning official, which you have a right to challenge this determination in front of the zoning board of appeals.
Can you comment on the fines and court action?
If somebody, we're allowed to fine people up to $300 a day for any violation. Each day is a separate violation. Then if they don't pay the fines, then I can take them to court.
Ma'am?
I just have a question. So like in our town laws, bylaws or whatever, I assume there's something in there about this is a residential area.
Yes.
So you have the map on that this is a residential area. So even not having that letter in front of me, you seem to zero in on that 5 thing. To me, it's more of a yes or no, forget the 5, because it's a hotel. To me, bottom line, it's a hotel. It may not be rented every night because the way Airbnb works, if not enough people want it, but it is a hotel for all intents and purposes. Whether or not they should be allowed to have it is another issue. You know, I have some input on stuff, and you know, some days you never know it driving by, and then there's other days that there's lots of cars there. But I thought our town laws should have something, not the state and building codes and all this complicated stuff, that there should be something that says this is residential. Residential means you live there, it's your family and you, and renting a long-term thing should actually be addressed in our laws. If they're lacking, maybe we should draft some stuff up.
It's not lacking.
Not allowed, but it's not there, you can't have it.
Well, we point in the direction of the state. What I'm hearing tonight is we adopt the state's code, and the state effectively
But then
says...
how do we keep McDonald's off of Main Street?
I think
Well, I'm
this-
speaking with respect to this one specific topic. With respect to fast food...
Because no one ever anticipated it being done, so...
That's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, but the law...
And actually on our list, I mean, we're starting to do some planning for annual meeting next year, and one of the things on our list is whether we want to look at any regulations around this. Barring any counter regulations, we default to the state. So that if that's the state guidelines, the state regulations, then those are what we take.
Because like
No.
looking online, I don't have the whole thing in front of me, but trying to find the laws that's there, it seems that there should be enough there to interpret in a way that we want it to be interpreted in,
We're
as opposed
in the
to...
same boat as the state. This is all very new, and it's only really coming up kind of, you know, in the last couple of years, and it hasn't been...
But you would never, if
Yeah,
someone
needs to be
built a
vetted.
hotel on Kettle Hall Road, you would never let them build a hotel on
That's
Kettle
right,
Hall
it's in our
Road.
code.
Because
We
a
don't
hotel,
allow
yeah,
hotels.
because a hotel
There's
is very...
some
But it is a
area.
hotel, so
This-
someone
this
can make a
is- this is-
I
determination
think
it's
the
a
fact that
hotel.
there are so much adrenaline in this room is indicative of the fact that there's a lot of gray area.
And we only came by accident because I saw it on, I get the little emails, and I wasn't sure how many people on Kettle Hall knew. I guarantee you, a lot of them don't know, and at the next meetings, there are gonna be a lot more people showing up and having their
I'll get
say.
you, I promise.
I have a lot to say.
So I've been looking through the table of uses, and I'm looking at the memorandum from the state on Airbnb, and I'm reading your, and actually, I don't think I actually agree with your determination. Originally, I was thinking that Airbnb, you know, so reading yours, I think if it was a long-term rental, I think what you're determining here would apply, but the fact that it's a short-term rental, so if you look at, so this memorandum, I don't know if you have it, the last paragraph says,
What's the date on that?
May 2014.
2014.
yeah.
2000, okay.
So it says DPH has determined that lodging provided through Airbnb or similar online services is subject to local licensure or permitting as a lodging house or bed and breakfast in the same manner as traditional lodging houses and bed and breakfast establishments are licensed or permitted. Airbnb specifically states that in many cities you must register, get a permit, or obtain a license before you list your property or accept guests. It further states that by accepting our terms and services and activating a listing, you certify that you will follow local laws and regulations. So I feel like that it falls back to local laws and regulations. And then when I look at the table of uses under mercantile, it lists hotel, motel, which I would consider bed and breakfast, and Airbnb, and under residential it says no.
Can I see that? I've never seen that. And the state inspector never brought that to light.
Although, I mean, I know there are a couple of bed and breakfasts that are in residential that have them permitted in residential.
They live
So-
there though.
Yeah, this is
Their
the
owner
board,
owns
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I think
So
your
is that a home
determination,
business
I think
then?
your determination, Mike, if they were long, so if it was 5 or less people over 30 days, is, I would, everything I've read, reading all different towns, you know, the touristy type towns, 30 days is what they determine short-term rental.
Yeah, it's right here. It just says right here,
Right.
transient nature, transient occupancy of a dwelling unit.
So your determination, if it was rentals over 30 days, I would say is accurate, but the fact that it's under, I think we do answer that, you know. And actually, and that's coming from a mind of, I thought the Airbnb was a good idea, but in reading this,
Right.
in reading
Well,
this,
there's two-
I'm just trying to follow this. And
No,
from this
you
memorandum-
know something?
from
This is the
memorandum-
first I've seen of this, and I have to say that, that basically, the information, and I did tell this to the Board of Health chairman also, when this came up, we had a discussion in my office. You're gonna have health requirements, you're gonna have conservation requirements,
Sprinkler fire.
you're gonna have building requirements. They're all mixed to build you the product, but they're all separate at the same time. So, for example, and now I know why I didn't see this, this comes from the Board of Health. This is the Department of Health, not the building code.
Yep.
So they regulate your septic,
Right.
however they want to regulate it, that's their guide. They're saying, we're treating that situation that they reference as a lodging house. But the building code is telling me, the building official, what a lodging house is. So when someone says, well, the Board of Health's gonna tell you, you know something, that's a bedroom. Well, in the building code, that might not be a bedroom. So basically, this really has no bearing for me as a building official because it's a health requirement under the health and sanitation code. So when you're renting property, that's how they're determining, they're gonna look at the septic system and what you need to do for safely allowing people to reside there for health requirements because you're renting property just like an apartment. You call the Board of Health, they come down, linoleum's ripped up, you got a rip screen, that's what this is all about, not the building code.
So I think personally what the town needs is, for clarification on this, is we need some type of bylaw on short-term rentals. But also, if we determine that we wanted to have this, you know, if we wanted to have it, we would change that no under lodging and residential to say special permit. So if the owner came before us and said, hey, I want to open up an Airbnb, all the abutters could come in and say, no, we're right there, we don't want it. Or if it's a house in the middle of nowhere and nobody would care, then fine.
Yeah, you know something, you're right on with that. You can allow the use in your bylaw, but you have to specify it, and that's the way to do it. And I'll tell you how Lunenburg did it. Anybody knows about the Holly House in Lunenburg, right? It used to be a residential home. Long story short, they changed it over to a bed and breakfast. And then they had a restaurant inside. And then the town said, ooh, they can't have a restaurant, it's a single-family home. And as long as, at that time, years ago, if they did not have over, they could not lease out to more than 5 people. So we said, hey, you can have 2 bedrooms, right? And you can have 3 bedrooms for lease. Here's what happened, a single-family home turned into a bed and breakfast with a restaurant, full kitchen, catering services, right? Weddings, the whole 9 yards, was a single-family home. They made a bylaw in the town, as this gentleman is saying, is it Eric? They allowed for a special permit for in the residential zone, you can do a bed and breakfast, /inn, right? And they allowed it, and that's how they allowed it. That would make it allowable, but right now, the only avenue that anyone has, in my opinion, is you need to challenge my opinion in front of the zoning board of appeals, because that's the due process that you need to take, because I made a determination.
Yeah, I know.
You've been very patient.
You guys might not like it, but I mean, I'm going by the facts, and they can overturn it, and that's, I do have all the respect in the world. I mean, I'm no different than anyone else, I'm just telling you how I made my determination.
Okay, I just have a few things to say, and
Introduce yourself,
I'm
please.
Maureen Swartz, I'm 85 Nashway Road, and I live directly behind the woods to the property we're talking about. And, sir, I forget your name?
Mike.
Mike.
Yeah.
I did not contact you because I didn't know, but I did contact the selectmen about the issue because I
Sure.
have a lot of concerns. I was home that night of that party and several others. I've gone to speak to the people and they were having a wedding, you know, one of them was a wedding party, another one was just a bunch of people. With all due respect, it was definitely more than 5 people. I would say
That was
probably
probably
15 to
before he
16.
made the
That may have been,
He
if
made
she
the
did,
ruling
yeah.
recently, we've not done one since then.
That's
Okay.
right. There was one that was already scheduled, and I believe I talked to your wife, and I said, look, I haven't made my formal determination yet. No harm, no foul, let the last one go, because somebody's scheduled for a wedding. And I said, 5 or less people, as far as I'm concerned, in the future, you're good with me. And that's how I dealt with that.
Well, so I don't even know where to begin. I have 3 kids that play hockey. I leave at 6 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and there are cars all over. I'm picking up kids, I drive, and there's cars parked on both sides of the street. Very dangerous, very dark, and I also have kids with friends up and down Kettle Hole. They go back and forth on bikes. It's a lot more traffic. On the weekends, it's bad enough just with the residents, but then you have all these other people coming and going, and some of them are young, and, you know, I'm sorry to say this, but they drive faster, and it's dangerous, and I'm very concerned about it. Sounds like I'm a little too late, but your decision is already made.
Well, I mean, the traffic up there, just because it's in violation, doesn't mean that the decision would be any different. The decision would be the same. What you may have is an issue where it's being violated. That's the issue. And as I said to this gentleman, you know, when he had brought it to my attention, I work 15 hours a week as a part-time inspector for the town. That's about enough time for me to do everything I got going on with the help of my administrative assistant. Believe me, if somebody was to say, and I went to Sugar Road once, and I used to sit in front of that person's house, and they even called me up and said, yeah, there was a guy out here, and he was even over here in a car, in a gray Toyota Camry. I said, yeah, that was me policing what you told me to do.
Yeah, I mean, if I had known, my kid has a drone, I could take aerial shots all day long.
Yeah, you wanna know
He's out there all the
something?
time.
I'm gonna tell you what
I
it's
can do
gonna
it,
take.
no
I'm gonna tell you.
problem.
I'll tell you what it's gonna take. I'm the guy you gotta go through.
Okay,
I don't care if I get 1,000 calls on it,
Okay.
okay? Because I can only do so much work, and I will do my job, and I do my job. So if you see or believe that there are more than 5, here's the issue. I don't just work for the town of Bolton. I can't be in Bolton on a Friday night without coming in for an emergency or something like that. I'm not scheduled to do that. I have flex hours where I can come in and I can go police that issue, just like when Century Mill Stable collapsed. I was there all night long. You know, they can give me comp time. I only get paid for the hours I work.
I mean, I'll tell you this, I'm the daughter of a New York City detective, deceased now, but
Yeah.
I would never call a policeman about a party. I'm not gonna bother them when somebody.
Right, well, here's the
Heart
issue.
attack,
But you gotta look,
something,
right.
But I'll
But you
call
gotta
you
look, right.
and leave you a message saying.
And what I'm gonna
I
do
got
is I'm
this,
gonna have a
I'll take
police
it.
officer meet me there, because I need a witness of what I'm gonna see.
I'm not, well,
But
I'll
that- that's
go
not
out and
your
report
problem.
it at 2 AM, but I'm not
But
gonna
that's
call
not-
the
but that's
police
not
in
your
a tiny
problem.
town with part-time
Right.
policemen, like,
But
what do they
that's
have
what you
doing
need.
it?
How else are you gonna prove that they're
On
violating?
duty at all times.
As Mark said, this is going to be a conversation we're going to have a ton over the next year.
I just have one more
Yeah.
comment, sir, can I?
Very quickly.
I worked as a consultant for the town of Concord in August and September when these incidents happened. I worked in a different, in the antiques division, but I mentioned it to the town planner. And I said, can you believe this? How does this happen? And she said, we just went through the whole thing, and they have laws on their records if you want to.
They did do it, they did set bylaws, that's what you need to do.
That's what
You
you
need
do.
to set the bylaws, I'm playing with this
That's what I've
thing
been waiting to
that's
say all
up in the
night,
air.
get them on the books.
That's really what you need, you know
Yeah.
something, that's what you need to
That's what a
do.
lot of towns are
It's
doing.
like medical marijuana,
Yeah.
you know, it's all about that stuff. It's like adult daycare, adult entertainment, that stuff is protected, but you gotta get a bylaw, then you can follow the bylaw. But if you don't have a bylaw, it stays open-ended. But I wanna just make it clear that The only way I can tackle this problem is to get a phone call while it's going on, be able to go there while it's going on with a police officer to have legal witness. It can't be my word against yours or his against the neighbors. It has to be
So you
evidence.
really want to call at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
When there's parties and cars coming in and out? Do you?
I mean, if you're gonna call at that point, I mean, you do that, you know, if I gotta get out of bed, I'm not gonna, but the problem is, I'm not gonna get the call till the next morning. It's on the tape machine.
All right, we're gonna move on. We've got a busy agenda. We're gonna talk about this a lot for the next year.
So for the abutters,
Keep it quick.
if you see, if you think you see something going on, document it. And quite honestly, don't hesitate to call the police if there's a real issue. That's what they're there for. They'll go, they'll assess the situation, they'll either, you know.
They may call me at my house, they may call me at my house and I'll come down in the morning.
So, Mike,
But just, you know, but don't hesitate to do that if it's an issue.
okay,
But it is something that we will be talking about. You know, sign up for the email notices so you know when it's on the agenda. Come give us your input.
Can I give just a final?
Hold on,
I had my
I was just
hand up
gonna
for
say,
a
hold
long
on that,
time.
you guys can,
You got a chance to talk quite a bit.
I was
And
just-
this is a topic we're
Early
gonna talk
on,
about.
but
okay,
there's been a
well,
lot of.
I want to,
We have a
Mike
lot
Wallace,
to
he
talk.
said we can appeal this somewhere,
Yes,
and I
that's
want
what
to
I
know
was
where,
gonna say.
because
Board of Appeals, it's right in the letter.
I don't have that letter, because I'm not in a butter, because I'm
Well,
further down the road, I guess.
You guys can appeal this to the Board of Appeals, and I personally think you have an argument, so I would do it.
Residential use is not what's being done, so, but, so
I
we
was
just do
not
it
gonna
through
comment on
that?
that. I would just want to give a general comment, which just, I had sent to Erica early on, different articles from Boston Globe that referenced cities and towns that were dealing with this issue. And one of the towns, Newton, actually said that they allowed only 3 people, that there was only 3 people, or you needed a special license, and also Somerville, you had to be owner occupied, Cambridge, you had to be owner occupied.
I
All
was
these
doing a lot of
things.
reading,
So
and
I don't
every
know
town
where
has
the
something
3
different.
Yeah, it depends how you write your bylaw.
You're saying the 3 came from a bylaw?
No, the 5 comes from the building
No, I know
code.
the 5, but then why
The
are
3
they
probably comes,
3?
from- because a planning board may have said, look, we're only gonna allow you to lease the 3. But over in Lunenburg, they'll allow you, in a certain district, they will allow the rental of rooms. In their bylaw, you can look it up in Lunenburg, but it's only the rental of 2 rooms.
Okay, the other issue was what this one was referring to was the cars, and the thing with the cars is, no one moving to Kettle Hole would expect anyone to be parking other than in their driveway. Everyone has huge driveways, that's where you park your cars. The road is not set up really for having cars parked on the street. There's no streetlights there. It is, I mean, pitch black at night. Even if I'm coming down with my car, it's a little scary. You have to really be seeing what's happening. It's just asking for trouble parking on the street. And that is what has been happening a lot.
Thank you for your conversation.
Can I wrap up? Do the last comment from me?
Very quickly.
It's, yeah.
Thank you.
Basically, you do have something to hang your hat on at this time. 5 or less, as far as I'm concerned, they're fine. So if somebody can prove several times, or, you know, maybe once we give them a
It puts us in a very
warning.
awkward position to be over there photographing their
And who's
clientele.
sitting there?
And I
who's
don't know
going
how else are you gonna
It's
do
Doesn't
this?
seem
right,
to
it's
bother you.
okay.
I've seen you over there numerous times taking pictures. My friends have said, they see, we're not.
No.
we're not-
Okay.
we're not-
All right. We're done. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. As my letter stated, you do have a right to appeal, and that would be
Yeah, I
avenue
think-
at this
I
point.
think.
Is there a time frame?
And then the other
Uh,
part is the,
Usually it's 20 days, but I don't know, in this case,
No.
it was 20 days.
I said no, the day that I called the police and all that, and there were 24 cars out there, yeah.
It doesn't say the number of days you have to appeal on your
That's when I called the
Usually it's
police.
either 21 or,
It doesn't say.
it might be 30, it's either 20 or 30.
But if it doesn't say that, it's not fair to them.
But that
Yeah,
would,
but they can look it up.
that would apply to the person who submitted it.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's under Mass General law, anyone, you know, it doesn't know to do that, but it's under Mass General law.
It's a nuanced issue. Towns are struggling with it. They're getting
Sounds like a lot of
more to do.
It's been around for Airbnbs for years, like, other places must have written.
But they have bylaws for it.
So
They would have to do exactly what I'm saying, allow short-term rental by special permit, done, you know? And then we allow the special permit or not, case by case, based on butters, based on the density of the living, you know, if it's,
Where is it, what's the house,
yeah,
how big?
if it's a house in the middle of the woods and nobody, you know, if you're from the middle of the woods and you don't know an Airbnb is there, then does it really exist?
I think they're just becoming more pervasive, you know, it's no longer more resort areas that,
Yeah,
you know, it's becoming, you know, every town is now, you know.
Well, and what people use it for is weddings at the International, weddings at Jay's, you know, or just coming in for like harvest season. In general, I think it's actually a good thing.
I think it's a terrific thing. I think it needs to be,
But it is, if it is a real dense situation where neighbors are, you don't want to piss neighbors off, so I think the special permit is the way to go.
There's also the question about taxes too, that's another.
you bet.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what the governor's looking at right now, is putting.
Not only
legislation
taxes, not only a
in the
local
state
tax that you can charge, the concept that we've got now, I'll pick that example, I don't know the house exactly, probably a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot multi-bedroom house.
Right.
With now, in theory, no kids in school.
Right.
These are the creative things.
Right, yeah, you reduce kids in the school, and the town does have the option to tax, which we don't.
Right now, we don't, yeah.
Yeah, locally you have the option.
And actually, I know Governor Baker's looking for legislation to do a state tax as well.
So, I mean, we could really make it beneficial, but the way it stands now, I would say.
It's a free-for-all right now.
It's a free-for-all.
But it is for many towns, I don't want people to think it's just one.
No, but all
Few
towns,
towns are
all
ahead.
towns are putting bylaws in
Yeah, that's
place,
exactly what.
which, if you look at the list of 2018
Right.
bylaws, I added it.
I
So.
wouldn't consider us as being delinquent. We're talking
But it
about.
might be
moving.
worth checking out town Concord, they've already got bylaws.
Yeah. And I think if they appealed it, they would, based on my interpretation, they would win.
Does Stowe have one?
Mainly, I was looking at more like the Cape Towns.
No, I know, but
Concord.
to my point, that I don't think we're behind the curve.
Yeah.
Stowe, Berlin, Harvard.
So bed and breakfasts are owner occupied business?
If they're on, it's like a home occupation.
It's under the
But I think our one bed and breakfast is like 3 or 4 bedrooms, and I don't know people that, I've never heard anybody that's been there or used it.
Sure, it's a residence.
It's like maybe they have 1 or 2 guests every now and then. It's not like you have, you know, people out for a weekend party.
We still have a bunch of things.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
There's a difference, yeah. Moving right along.
Cottage, what do we want to talk about with the cottage over there?
Well, so Dave and Eric had requested that in the future, instead of a meeting where we have a discussion of this cottage overlay district with.
Do we shut the door?
Yeah.
No, we can't shut the door. You're not allowed to shut the door, it's open meeting.
Oh, okay.
But can we ask them to step out?
I think that would make me happy.
Thank you very much.
No, you can't shut it.
Yeah, we have to leave it open, but maybe you guys can go upstairs.
Because our open meeting would become, closed meeting.
I was just at the Boston Con, they keep their door closed.
Huh?
I was just at the Boston Con, city of Boston, where.
Oh, I don't know, I heard at least the selectmen say that you're not allowed to close it.
Although it was a glass door, so maybe.
I think it was.
Give us a quick rundown of.
I was just gonna say, so I'm in the process of scheduling a meeting with various developers and also the Skinner.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Here, I'll just tell them to.
Yeah, good time to leave.
Move along.
You don't have to go home, but you can.
I'll move this because we can't hear.
14 inches, so we can go there.
Yeah, no, we have a long.
You don't have to go home.
So apparently that's the first party ever in Bolton.
What is all this noise? It's having fun. I don't get it.
Okay, all right, so I'm in the process of scheduling a meeting with various developers in town, including the broker for the Skinner property, because you guys indicated that that's the potential property that we want to include in this overlay. Prior to having that meeting, I thought, since we really haven't had a discussion between the board members on this draft bylaw, we should go through it together to make sure that it's in good enough shape that we feel confident that when we have the developers in, you know, we're all on the same page on what this says.
And to that point, especially if there are no crazy changes here, or if there are, after we make them, you should send this out to that group of
I
developers,
will.
right?
So I sent this
Just
to
as a kind
them
of, it's got the
already.
watermark on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I read through it and I thought this was really good.
I thought it was awesome.
So we said that automatically you're allowed 2x the density.
That was David's, David's
well,
last edit.
Yeah, well, that's what it was, I thought, it was
We
2x.
changed some number here. Hold on.
No, I
I'll remember.
thought it was 2x. But if you, no, you changed the percentage of affordable
Yeah, maybe.
to
Yeah.
20%, from 10% to 20%. And so automatically you get 2x, so instead of 1 unit
Yes.
per acre in Foxborough, you get 2 units per acre. But if you had 20% affordable, you would get...
25.
25, you would get 4x.
Yeah, and I'm throwing darts. I mean, these are, it made sense to me, but if we want to say 50 or 20 or whatever, I'm not married to it.
Yeah. I mean,
But yes.
I would almost say that these numbers are the minimum, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, the 25 lines up with the 40B, so.
that's where my logic is coming from. Yep.
So I mean, so if this is, you know, primarily elderly, why would we want 3 bedrooms allowed?
So where's that?
Maybe we don't. Maybe we want to.
Section 4A. So the other thing, under Title 5, like, I'm painfully familiar with that. If it's 2 bedroom, then it can come under the elderly septic limit. If it's 1 or 3, it's 110 gallons per bedroom.
Okay.
So, whereas the elderly allowance for a 2 bedroom is 150 gallons total.
Okay, all right.
So, you know, so that's certainly one, you know, one thing to.
That's
you know,
a good point.
But the question is, if it's an elder, you know, if it's for elderly, why would you want?
Well, but
why would we all
over
3
50
bedrooms?
Here's one argument.
I'm sure there's a lot of argument. I'm just.
Tax dollars. So developer builds a bigger house, affluent community, people will pay more for it, tax base is higher. But.
Are you more likely to have the children and the grandchildren move in if it's a 3 bedroom?
40 and
There's nothing, if it's owned by 55 or older, there's nothing that would prevent children and grandchildren.
55 plus does.
If 55, but that's only the owners. If I have 3
You
bedroom.
can write it however you want, and I don't think we touch it in here, and it's a good point, and we probably should touch it. My parents are looking for a new place, and it's gonna be around this area. One of the places we looked at was, Toll Brothers is doing a deal by the airport in Stowe, on Boxborough Road. So I called them and got some information. I asked them that question, because I had a vague recollection there was some rule. And their rule was, I'm not gonna get it exactly right, kids or people under the age of 55 can be there on like a part-time basis. They cannot be there for longer than pick a day.
So they can't
15
claim a
days in a
permanent
row,
residence.
30 days in a row, something like that. Yeah, so it doesn't feel like it. So we could include something like that, and we probably should.
I think we should.
That's kind of the whole point of it.
Well, that's right, I mean, we talk about the owners having to be 55. But we don't talk about.
Do we say it?
So under section C1, where it talks about age qualification, it says occupancy in an SRC is deed restricted to persons 55 years of age or older.
C1.
First page, or to a person 55 years of age or older and their spouse and/or live-in aid. So
Yeah,
it
you got
doesn't
it.
say anything about.
Yeah.
And it's occupancy, it's not.
It's occupancy, so that would say,
Okay,
so that would prohibit, you know, that would prohibit little kids going from school, but it would also, technically, that would prohibit their children from staying there for
Yeah.
a period of time.
For the bedrooms, what is Crystal Springs?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer.
You know, and also 3 bedrooms.
Crystal, well, I mean, we're,
That was a 55 plus.
well, that's 55 plus, I forget, but there were some of the floor plans there that we actually made them open up what they had said, well, this is a den with a closet and a door.
Yeah.
And we actually made them open it up so it was,
It wasn't a bedroom.
so it was no longer
I'll
considered a
find out.
bedroom.
There's one on the market right now.
I actually wouldn't be against 3 bedrooms, because if you wanna have a couple of grandkids come over and stay over,
30 days.
Yeah.
You set a time limit,
Yeah.
so that you know that
I'm
they're
not
not in
against
school.
it, and like you said, if people are willing to pay, not have a
More for
permanent.
the extra, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, yeah.
I'll cut you off, Erica.
No, very good. I'm just trying to find a section where it talks about the 3-bedroom.
It's under 4A,
C4A.
C4A. I mean, it's not saying they have to be 3 bedrooms, it's saying
Up to 3 bedrooms.
I would still be okay with allowing up to 3.
But what we can also do is we can say that a percentage can, only a certain percentage can be 3-bedroom. Like we can say a limit of 10% can be 3-bedroom. We can do that as well. That's the
Okay.
guideline.
Okay, all right, so.
I mean, if you're not having occupants that are gonna be in school, I see no reason
What's
to
the
get
concern?
Yeah.
It's more, I mean, I was just kind of playing through all the numbers, and 3 bedrooms messes things up pretty badly from a density perspective. Because if you have some if,
Because of the septic?
because of the septic.
It'd be
So-
shared
so-
septic, right?
It's shared septic, okay, so, putting my board alumni hat on here. Under the nitrogen loading limits, you're limited to 440 gallons per day per acre,
Okay,
okay? Which is 4 bedrooms.
okay.
So 4 bedrooms per acre is what you're allowed under.
So you like your 2-2s?
Well, so whereas with the elderly, it ends up as 2.9 elderly units per acre.
Okay,
If you have any kind of pre-treatment or advanced treatment, it can go up to 550 gallons per day,
okay.
or 5 bedrooms, or
So this is a local board,
3.6.
this is a local.
No, this is
board of-
Title 5.
So.
The
okay.
This is state. State.
How can you do?
I'm good.
One word for it.
No, because I lived this stuff for 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where if you go to 3, it's going to really mess up your density, your unit density and such. But it can be allowed, and we can allow a certain percentage.
How about
But,
just allow it and let the developer do the math?
That's what I was gonna say, I mean, let's not put constraints on
Right,
what.
part of it depends, and part of the goal here was to get a little more variety, and going from, the 4 and 5 bedroom McMansions to 3 bedroom elderly McMansions, isn't necessarily giving us the.
There's a difference, but if they think
It
it's
does help,
I still
but it
think
does-
3's modest.
I think putting a limit on the percentage of
That's
3
fine,
bedroom would be okay. I think that would kind of, I think that gets more to what we want, is just a little more modest, a little more,
You know what, this is, I'll grab you in a second. This is a very good topic to keep as something in brackets for us to talk to the developers about. Because they might say to us, what
Yeah.
are you talking about? I never sell a 3-bedroom 55 plus.
Exactly, I
Yeah.
think
Shot
we
a
need to
farm in
ask.
Hudson,
Who builds these?
2,700 square feet. And Jack Sargent will come before us, that was his project.
Yep.
2,700 square feet. They're good size, they're not crazy McMansions, but they're good size, comfortable, luxurious units, and they're all 2 beds.
Mhm.
But then they'll have like an open
but-
lot.
Yes, an open office or a den
An
or
That's
a.
very-
And it really isn't, it's not a quasi-bedroom, it's an open lot.
So you're saying that-
But that open loft or that open den or whatever, that becomes where the grandchildren stay
Right.
for the week.
So you're saying without a local
But you
treatment
got
plant,
your 30
we couldn't go to the 4X per acre that we were talking about? Without a local treatment plant?
You can.
But let them do that if they
Well,
want to.
no, but,
Let
well,
them
you,
do a
no,
wastewater
you
treatment.
I'm just
you
asking.
can, but you may need to set aside more land is not being,
Yeah.
you can, more
Or instead of
land
a
is-
septic, it's a bona fide wastewater treatment facility. It's cost prohibitive. No, I know,
Yeah.
but let them do it.
Yeah, but
Let
I'm saying
them say that.
No, but you're saying this way, setting aside other land, so you can make open space non-septic.
If you may need more open
So that's
space.
perfect, so you can include the open space, which we already have to have anyway, so.
Yeah.
Advisory, colleague, chairman.
Brian Boyle, Sampson Road, years of practice.
Not advisory. Thank you for clarifying that. That was very important.
I just had a question about the timeline for your consideration of this bylaw and like, do you have a sense of that?
As soon as, I mean, if there was, definitely by the next town meeting, but if there was a special town meeting, I would love to get it on then. because the Skinner property is actively, they came before us, just for a timeline, the Skinner property came before us like 2 years ago, was
This
it?
was their idea.
This was their idea.
And we dismissed it a little.
We dismissed it because we wanted to keep a business, but clearly there's not gonna be any business there. I mean, there's some special type cases, that they're talking about maybe, but, economically for the town, in the advisory's perspective, if you had 24 units, say $8,000 each tax-wise, I mean, that's like 200 grand, It's a Wilder Road culvert a year. It's the reason why development,
The reason I'm asking about the timeline is I'm imagining this is the type of bylaw that a lot of people in town might hear about at meeting and
Yeah.
sort of like, there'd be a lot of emotion, so I feel like getting people looped in
Good
sooner
Yeah.
into the process so that they understand what it is.
Well, so this is why we're talking about it now.
Yeah.
And this is why next month we're gonna have a meeting with a range of people, because like we were saying, we wanna get this done now. So we're ready to go. If there's a special town meeting in December, we can start presenting it.
Here's the other background. Here's the other background. So in the past, I'll guess, 90 days,
Yeah.
3 separate applicants came to us with traditional, conforming, commonsensical subdivision requests. And we're looking at it saying that that's a number of units. What are you guys building? Is there an affordable component? No, we're building 5,000 square foot, 6-bedroom,
Yeah.
I'm exaggerating.
Yeah.
We actually talked to one and
The
said,
18
look, you've got a commercial lot as part of your parcel. Can we convince you to keep that as commercial? Can we work with you on a business development? They were agreeable. We talked to the next and said, have you considered a 55 plus, an age restricted type of thing? And we got to talking and it is something that they're going to consider. I don't know if they'll get there, but we're looking at it saying, can we get a little bit of diversity in town? I think you're right. I think there will be a motion. I'm hopeful that we can steer it in a positive direction, because I think it really is positive. We have a huge financial problem in this town. It's a terrific town, it's got a lot of great resources. It is not a very balanced town. It is great at promoting a single use that looks a very specific way. To get a little bit of diversity would not be the worst thing in the world, is my opinion. So I want to have the conversation.
And like, financially, the numbers I always use is, so between these 3 subdivisions, it would be 34 houses, which is roughly, say, 10 grand each revenue. If on average each house has, say, 2 kids, which is 14,000 each, so that's 20.
You're in the hole every time you issue a building permit.
So you're down 18,000 for each house. That's, that's a $500,000, with these 3 subdivisions, that's a $500,000 in the hole we are.
Yeah.
So,
Can't keep doing it.
so so with, the town meeting, that was the focus, and that was the focus with the town common, that was the focus with everything. If we say, this will completely flip the equation on at least, if we get this 18-house subdivision to turn, instead of being down 18 grand each house, you're gonna be up 8 grand. That's a $26,000 swing for each unit. And that's just a 1-for-1, not saying 2-for-1, 4-for-1,
Right.
So I think it sounds like a really interesting idea, so.
But we're ready for spirit. I think you're right. I think there will be some emotion, and that's okay. I think that's good.
I think once we explain to
Yeah.
people what we're doing, they'll get it.
I hope so.
Yeah, and the other.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, and the other important reason that we can't forget to mention, it's not just about the taxes, we do have an aging population
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah, that was, makes
Well, no,
sense.
Erica, that's the same issue for me. The aging population can't afford to stay here.
No, they
Yeah,
can't afford,
because
and
we're running
I
out of
can tell
money.
you how many times I had
It's the same
someone older
issue.
walk into my office and say, gee, I really wish we had some diversity in this town for housing. I'm gonna have to look elsewhere because there's nothing here that I can either afford or it's just, they're too big.
My parents are moving from Falmouth and handing over a $6,000 tax bill for probably a $20,000 tax bill. And I don't think a lot of people can do it. It's painful. I don't know why they're doing it.
Another factor even on top of all that is, currently we're at, I think, 3.5% affordable units in town.
Right.
So if we're under 10%, we're subject to 40Bs going.
Absolutely.
Our golden property right now, I would consider like the Kane property, at the corner of 117, and, a 40B can come in and say, I'm just gonna develop a 40B here, screw your business.
And a 40B
and
can
we can't
be
stop it, we have no
Very
say.
wonderful and very responsible and great people, or it cannot. They can go both ways.
But we don't get what we want.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we have to be, as a town, cognizant of moving towards adding affordable housing, or we're gonna be,
Yeah.
Correct.
we're gonna be at the mercy of developers putting whatever they want.
Bad developers, they're not all bad.
Well, and I think we talked about this too, like, our focus for this year should be on things like that, that can help the tax base.
I think so.
I mean, there's lots of bylaws that are interesting, but it's like, we should really focus on those
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I would just concur to wrap this up, though. I think it makes sense to, let's wait, let's hear from the developers, let's hear what makes sense.
Of course, yeah.
On the specifics, totally.
Specifics
Yeah,
on this.
And we'll do that.
And then in terms of the dwellings, maybe we also talk about efficiencies.
Efficiencies, which
Yeah.
one, bro?
Like efficiencies, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3
Oh,
bedroom.
yeah, okay.
Alrighty. Are we looking at the open space and recreation plan?
Yeah, one other thought I had too on this spice overlay before we move on.
Sure.
I've seen in other towns that they actually do go through design review board, so I think that's something maybe we should consider for this.
What goes
I
through
didn't
design
realize we
review?
didn't have it in there. We totally should.
I don't believe it's in here, no.
It's like anything.
Well, any
Special
special permit goes through
I thought
design.
all, yeah.
You know, planning board can, any special permit, planning board can.
If you
recommend
think
go
we
to.
should specifically call it out, I don't think it can hurt. I was assuming it was part here, but I totally don't disagree.
Well,
There's a
the
lot.
special permit, you're referring to
The
the
business.
special permit for the business. This
Right,
is
so-
different, this is residential, so I think we need to specify it.
Yeah, you may be right.
So-
I would.
So,
So section E, design criteria. The planning board may utilize the skills of the design review board to review the architecture.
Okay.
You already thought of that, Erica.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Well,
All
to
right.
give her credit, it was a year ago.
It was
Yeah, and I read it
a couple years
separately,
ago.
so. I mean, the only other thing I'd like to throw out there is in the determination of, and this is more about the, you know, across from the high school, is that in determining the number of lots and such, that only residential or possibly village overlay land be able to be counted for that.
For what are you saying?
Say it again.
Determination of the number of lots or the number of units.
The issue that you found on the Four Bush Mill one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that only residential or village overlay would be allowed to be, you know,
Do you want to give up a commercial or industrial parcel? for-
Well, Skinner is limited business, so it needs to be,
aren't they part of the village
For
overlay
a
as
part of the
well?
village overlay.
yeah, but that's not residential, you know?
My point is, you know, when we drew this, I don't want to,
It's a good
I'm
question.
not sure we want to.
Overlay is, mixed-use overlay is completely different. I think by saying resident, you would be negating Skinner, so.
No, he's proposing resi or
Or where the mixed overlay.
Or where there's a mixed overlay already.
versus
Yeah.
anything, versus anything
Yeah.
but industrial. I mean, we can do whatever we want.
Right,
Yeah,
so,
I mean, yeah,
so
either-
it's well, I think we'd have to, we can't just do it for 357, we'd have to create the zones of where it would be, so the zones would be residential plus mixed
Oh,
use.
that's a good point. We're not.
Well, no, but we don't want mixed use, because I don't want an entertained property. So we can do residential, can we add like,
well, we're looking at the.
Or are we doing a very specific overlay of just the two properties?
Well, I thought
That's a
that was
specific
the original
overlay. It
intent.
might be two, it might be four, it might be six.
Yeah.
But I think the original idea was an overlay.
Well, and I thought it was to identify at least two
I don't think we should do
areas.
specific, because what if another subdivision comes in
Yeah.
on whatever road, then we have to wait until the next town meeting.
Then what do you say?
I
Any
say
parcel?
residential and the Skinner property.
I don't think.
That might be,
I don't
I think that's spot zoning. I
That's
don't think
spot.
that would.
How's that
Yeah.
spot zoning? I'm saying
Because
all
it's-
residential, and
Yeah, but
then,
then you're calling out one parcel. I doubt you can do that.
I
how's
don't,
that spot
I
zoning?
think you have to say residential and limited business.
Yeah.
You can't identify.
But what's wrong
right.
with that? Oh, because you're worried about losing business.
Well, it's by special permit, right? So we cannot allow it.
Special permit.
Yeah, but.
Yeah, but it's one
Yeah.
more thing.
It has to be, you have to have a
Yeah.
reason not to allow.
Right,
Well, what
Chapter
other,
55 is gonna be one town anyway.
that's true.
Yeah, but you want to, if you're doing the work of doing the bylaw, you want to open it up and be used.
what is the
you-
Cape property zoned as?
Limited business.
It is limited business.
Well, the front half is limited business, the back half is
Yeah,
residential,
that's right.
So the.
which is what screwed them up at town meeting a few years ago.
Yeah. Well, we could figure that out.
Okay.
This
That
way
is
we
a
can
good
work.
point.
I'm putting out there is a,
You are right. But originally we were thinking, could we just say, I guess, if we- I don't know, could we just say the Skinner property and that Hudson property? I mean, is that spot zoning? Then why couldn't you say the
Not
Skinner?
not if we're doing an overlay.
If we're doing an overlay,
I think
kinda
you can
pick
do
it. It's
that.
gotta be two, we
Why?
kinda want three.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Three's better.
better, but
Yeah.
If you're doing an overlay, why couldn't you say the Skinner property in residential? I mean, that's,
I got it.
Because you're calling one property out
That's an
and
limited
then one.
business.
I'm calling every
Class.
property out.
No.
Say every property besides, then exclude some, I don't know. I mean, it's, we're talking about 90% of the
Yeah,
town.
let's get, yeah.
There's a way to word it, I'm sure.
Ask Brian
Details.
in a very quick way and see what he says.
Sure, I can do
You know,
that.
without getting too expensive.
And are we definite that we want to do 55 plus
Versus
Yeah.
what?
versus just leaving it?
Non-age restricted?
Non-age
No,
restricted.
definitely
No,
not.
and then,
Definitely 55.
I think we do.
okay, because I didn't know, the other, I guess demographic that would be nice to touch upon would be the young professionals. Getting people that are younger to move here then
Right.
they, I'm
No,
putting it out there.
Then they move into the McMansions as their family grows, and then
Well,
And then it's gotta get
if we,
restricted.
if we want to continue this along, I think that we should have some type of apartment zone as well, you know, personally. I mean, that's what I think.
It might be a different bylaw, because a lot of this caters specifically to that, but I don't think that's a bad idea, along the same
Just
lines of
different
diverse housing.
I wouldn't be against one bedroom, or one or two bedroom apartment complex, because you're gonna get people out of school, you're gonna get, you know, you're not gonna get a huge chunk of kids. If you have kids, you're gonna move out of an apartment.
You will get pushback there.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you.
I'm sure,
The town
well,
will
that's why I'm going after this, we go after this first, it's
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this one makes all the sense.
Pick the battles.
Thanks.
I'm just saying I wouldn't be against it,
Sure.
me.
And Eric.
Huh?
Oh, no, we've talked about the space. That you talked about your soapbox, there's 27 things to get done.
Hey, be elected out and not elected out at any time.
That's right. Do we have something on that?
I didn't have something in the packet.
So I have the overall, I can just come up, I have the overall plan here. That I got from Rebecca. I did for the electronic, but I know you didn't have a whole lot of time.
I think they're left over from the. I saw people stashing danishes in their pockets at this point, and things left over. People on their way out.
So I don't know if the board had an opportunity to read this, if you have any comments at this point for conservation. It's draft at this point, it will be going finalized. It will be finalized this, I think,
Did you send us this or no?
We did, I did. I sent you a link to it, because it's a large.
Okay.
Oh,
I didn't see it,
I
sorry.
missed it.
I
I was looking at just the
yeah.
attachments, so I apologize, yeah, I missed it.
So, you guys want to wait and talk about
Could
this?
you just
at the next
give us a
meeting?
summary of it? Just kind of like.
It's a hard thing to give us.
Not a summary,
Summarize
but
100 pages.
summarize the intent of it.
Oh, do you have any concerns, I guess, that we should focus
Yeah, well, I primarily looked at the development sections that they have in here. And I really only had two comments. The first one was, should the open space and recreation plan include information on possible build-out? How much of the open space that is privately owned actually buildable? Should we have a map to show that? Because right now they talk about, we have all this open space, but we don't want to lose it to development, but that may not necessarily be true. There may be only a portion of it that's actually buildable.
So when they're talking about open space, they're not talking about municipally owned land and subdivisions that, well, so it's municipally owned land and subdivisions that specifically state out
So they're,
open, what's in that list? I
so
guess?
they're looking at property that's owned by the town,
Mhm.
that's open space. They're looking at open space through the Foxbridge, so
Mhm.
Century Mill, all our subdivisions. And then also chapter land, which a lot of, and that's where
What's
the
that?
private part comes. Chapter land is where they get tax abatement for putting their land
Like a
with chapter
farm.
land. Yeah, so that way they're saying, okay, we're not gonna develop it.
Oh, so somebody's claiming
therefore-
farm.
But the thing is, they can eventually, they can get out of that
They
if
can
they
pay the
want
back
to.
taxes.
Yeah,
Like that they pay.
exactly.
Yep, yep.
So it looks at all of those.
But it's not undeveloped
spaces.
residential lots.
Potentially it could be.
But I'm saying that that's not included in their open space, undeveloped residential lots.
Well, I guess that's the point, that chapter land could be taken out of chapter land and then it could be
I'm talking
buildable.
about besides the chapter land, other, like, residential lots that are undeveloped. that aren't Chaco land isn't considered open space?
I don't know, I don't believe
No,
so.
I don't.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Do they take into account place where we've bought the development rights
No.
or agricultural restrictions?
Yes, that's included.
That's what I'm saying. They're not taking an undeveloped land
Right.
and saying, well, this is open space.
Correct.
That's all I
They
was
are not
asking.
doing that, correct.
Yeah, Mark just made a good point. Properties that have agricultural restrictions on them, like, I think the International one, no, they may be Chaco.
The winery does. I mean,
Winery,
the
yeah, the
winery does.
winery.
Shartner,
Okay.
I think, I think there's a few of them that we bought agriculture, the towns bought the restrictions on them.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then that's more ironclad than chapter land, so
Okay.
that's what we want. Yeah.
Okay.
And then maybe we could potentially jump to the back of the plan where it talks about their action items for the next 7 years, and I think maybe this is something that we could review easily. So I pointed out some of their tasks here that I thought planning board should be included on, and I wanted to kind of bounce it off
Okay.
with you and see if you agree. So one action item here is continue to expand the town's pedestrian and alternative ways of transportation, including making connections to conservation and recreation areas. They don't include the planning board in that task, and I
They
think
have to, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
another one here, the Selectmen and Economic Development Committee should be proactive in working with the Conservation Commission, Bolton Conservation Trust, Planning Board, and others to identify secure sites to meet future long-term. Oh, this is just, I think, a typo. They don't include the PB.
Did you
but
read this one? Doesn't that say planning?
The plan represents town planner.
Sorry, got it,
PB
got it.
represents,
Okay.
yeah, planning board.
So they just need to add the PD.
They just need to add for that one. This one was questionable. Encourage joint affordable housing open space projects where appropriate to the site in order to foster support for both of these important municipal needs. I think that as long as they're including me on that, I think that probably is
So what do these
sufficient.
include? These includes who's notified?
Who's sort of working on that task.
Yeah. And then, well, and if it's going to you, then you would bring it to us if we need
Which
to.
I think.
True, but I think that it should be accurate, and if it's the planning board should be.
I think the sidewalk and
updated on
pedestrian
that.
access absolutely should be the full planning board.
Yeah.
And again, similarly, the town should continue to protect land throughout Bolton and create a network of sidewalks and trail linkages in this part of town. I think planning board's not on here. I think they should be. This is just a typo one. Create targeted walking plans specific to neighborhoods in Bolton and continue to seek annual appropriation for maintenance of these walking areas.
I think all of those pedestrian things, I mean, it's important for us to
Yeah.
kind of weigh in a little bit and also just be knowledgeable of all the intent of the town and moving forward and what they want.
So that was it. Those are the ones that I thought that the board could be involved in. There are a couple of other, most of this is just edits that don't really need to be talked about, but there are a couple of items that are included in here that I don't know.
When do we need to get, when are they voting on this?
I don't know exactly, I just know it's within like the next month or two. So we could
So we could
technically, if
technically-
you want, I mean, I hate to just sit here and kind of go through this with you if you want to read it on your own. We can talk about it at the next meeting as well.
I think it slipped most of our.
That's a
Yeah,
good
let's do it
point.
next time.
Yeah, that's what I was, if we've got time to do it, then.
Well, no longer listens until after the original list, so let's start with the original list.
It's a full page.
Well, this was already hers. I just added the few on the bottom. So the congregate,
No, you're doing it.
you want to just talk us through the congregate? Is that, so that's allowing somebody 55 and over, like an accessory apartment? Is that what you're talking about, congregate?
So this just needs to be updated. This came up with 401 Main Street. So congregate living, if you're
Okay.
looking at Mass General Law under Section 3, which are the uses that are exempt under the State Zoning Act, that includes congregate living of disabled persons.
Yeah.
And that's typically the definition you're thinking of, disabled persons, congregate living. If you look at our bylaw, it's very confusing because if you go to congregate living, the definition of it, it's really talking about 55-plus assisted living facilities. It's not talking about congregate living under the Mass General Law.
Okay.
So if you go to the schedule of permitted uses and you go down to where it says congregate living, it's not allowed basically in any district except for limited business. But if we're talking about the exempt use, it would have to be allowed as of right everywhere.
Yep.
So that's a
It
problem.
needs to be
That's
clarified.
a big problem. Because we could get in a lot of, well,
So you're saying
We
change
could
our
potentially-
congregate living to a,
to some other name,
Yeah.
because it's too confusing.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Eric, this one's yours. Town meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
Try to cluster zone.
Yeah.
blow this thing up.
Cottage overlay, I think we just,
Cottage we talked about.
So, no, but what we're talking about here? Oh, cottage overlay, okay, never mind. That-
I don't want to pass up yet, go.
No, I was thinking of something different.
Amend inclusionary housing bylaw, allow for density bonuses.
These are just things that had come up at previous meetings, so I thought I would include it.
Okay.
We talked about potentially at phase 2, allowing for density bonuses in order to entice developers to want to do affordable. And then we also talked about at the Hudson Road project that, gee, we have this great historic structure, but it doesn't make sense economically for us to do anything with it if we can only put one structure in there. Maybe we allow for duplexes for historic,
I like that.
yeah.
It's kind of almost like the barn preservation bylaw.
Kind of, yeah.
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 So what's the logic that a developer can spend the significant cost to develop a historic house that needs a lot of structural stuff, blah, blah, blah. It's expensive. It's more feasible for them if there's 2 units, if it's revenue
To
tax.
save the house.
Okay, yeah, no, it makes
Martha
sense.
would be on board with that
I
one.
think
We
so.
talked about
Yeah.
that with Hudson Road.
Yeah, and I think that
Okay.
made sense.
So what if, the whole purpose of going through this list is so that I have a clear understanding
yes
of what
or
you
no.
guys want to move forward
Yep.
with town meeting, so
Yeah.
I can work on it in between meetings. So if you guys don't want to do the density, and we also, I think, have to pick and choose what's a priority, because we can't
Yep.
bring all of
Yeah.
this to
So
town
when you
meeting.
say density bonuses, what are you saying exactly?
Just allowing for just
Well, we
the
talked
same
about the 4,
cottage.
the
Cottage
4
density.
instead of 2.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
I would
that's,
say,
Yeah.
it's a similar topic. That's
Yeah.
within our cottage bylaw.
yep.
Okay, so-
Adding the duplex, that's kind of,
Yeah.
that's a different thing. It's important, it's something we talked about, I think that's a priority.
Yeah.
Congregate, it sounds like it's a priority.
That's a priority.
It's probably a
Because
language,
it's
it's a
illegal,
language thing.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first 3 are all yeses.
Rec marijuana, I mean, we
have to
did
do it.
we have to do it. We
We have
did
to
the
do it.
moratorium so that we,
And for this, it's more a process of how
How
you
to
want to
do it.
go about doing it.
This is gonna be a lot of discussion.
it's gonna be a lot of discussion. And I think to kick it off, a survey is not a bad idea. You know, kind of just throw it out there so we don't have a huge kangaroo court in here on the first one. And get folks' sense electronically.
I also think it's
So
worth
I'm sure-
trying to figure out or explore how much revenue would be generated. I don't know
Sure.
how you go about doing
Yeah,
that, but
I-
Well, actually, the numbers are in the law.
Well, the tax rate is in the law, I mean, but I don't
No,
know.
but the state, there is in the law, it says how much, how much each town can
it's 2%.
require, it's like 2%,
What are you
yeah.
trying to say?
Yeah, it's like 2%, but how do you,
I know, that's the
how do you
thing.
figure out what the
Volume?
volume would be, what the revenue of a,
I think you'd have to look at an existing facility.
Yeah,
and put it in there.
I'm not sure that that's really, personally, I don't think that's relevant to
Okay.
what we decide to, how we regulate it. You know, if it was 2 million a year, would we allow it a country covered, but if it's only 100,000, it would
you're
only
right.
be at,
I think it might be part of the discussion to advocate one way or the other,
Right.
for or against. Look at these estimates. But you're absolutely right, when we're putting the belts and suspenders on this is what it's gotta look like, this is where it's gotta be, code is the code.
Right.
It's not really revenue driven.
yeah.
And my intent was exactly what you said, David. It
Yeah.
was to whether or not we want to allow it.
Yeah, it puts context
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, but I mean, the tough thing is the numbers are all over the place and we don't have a good, and it sounds like the legislature is even looking at, well, should it be 2%, should it be something higher?
Sure.
And, and there's a whole article, there's an article in the paper today about it, so, but,
This rate of development was kind of
Yeah.
high. We had, I forget what I was looking at. might have been Four Bush Mill, or one of those three subdivisions. We had, in the past, I guess it expired in 2008, a rate of development bylaw that said on a typical year, this is how many, I guess, building permits could be pulled.
Now,
I don't know if it was single A and R, I don't know if it was only special permit
Yeah, I
subdivisions.
have to go back and look.
I think you can kind of do whatever you want. You could do nothing. We could totally do nothing. But my thought was, if they're coming at us fast and furious, do we want to temper the growth? I don't think it's unreasonable to think about it.
I mean, but we're talking about potentially doing, you would have to exclude the cottage
And
overlay.
maybe that's how you do it. Maybe you do.
well, so that's what I was just gonna say, because you don't wanna,
You don't wanna limit that.
limit all development.
Yep.
Like, I think there's some development where actually.
Maybe we don't want to do it at all. My
Yeah.
heart's not totally in it. But I thought it was curious that we had one before.
I'm actually,
And we don't have one
I'm pretty
now.
hesitant.
At one point, if I remember when that was originally adopted, the state allowed it in very limited circumstances for a very limited period of time.
That's why.
Oh, okay.
But it was not a general.
We wanna slow it
We want
down.
to slow everything down for the next 50 years. It was.
What were the specifics, you remember?
I don't know, that's
Okay.
way back, you know.
Oh, it's probably like 04, 03.
Well, right at the height of the market,
Yeah, right at the height of the
probably,
market,
yeah.
when,
And it expires in 08. The market.
Clearly.
Yeah, but no, but I mean, I think the state did put some
Okay.
bounds on what you could do there, and it was also, but it was, I think, because everything was exploding and towns couldn't keep up with it. And so they allowed towns to put, that restriction in place, but it was supposed to be
For a finite time.
for a very temporary period.
Did we ever trigger it, do you know? Did we ever?
Did we ever hit the max?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I don't know,
It'd be good to get some details, I don't know.
It'd be good to get details. I'm hesitant about it, even though I'm
Yeah.
anti.
There's a lot of stuff to do
The
here.
town of Stowe has a rate of development bylaw, so I'll research there.
Can I
I'll
say-
see if there's like an
Also, it'd
Let's
be-
say, let's say this is a
Yeah.
question mark, whether we want to.
Could you get the numbers, like,
Yeah,
over
we
the
might
past
not.
5 years, how many building
She
permits?
said
Yes,
so.
I can get the
So-
number of building permits.
Yeah.
All right, amend the agricultural business bylaw.
So this also came about because of 401 Main Street. Right now, if you look at the winery, this is how they're permitted. They have a special permit, not for the agriculture, because the farming, because that's exempt. But if you're looking at their accessory businesses, this is what they have, a special permit from Board of Selectmen. And this bylaw only pertains to properties that are 20 acres or more. I think it was really tailored for the winery. However, with 401 Main Street coming forward, I think it would be beneficial to, because we want our farms to thrive, to look at properties that are smaller than that, maybe limit it or expand it to 5 acres or more. So that way, we're giving these farmers opportunity to generate revenue, because it's really hard.
So I 100% agree with this, because, even on smaller farms, I mean, you can't survive off a farm unless you're, 100-acre, this giant, giant farm. You can't, but we want to keep those small 5-acre potential farms if they can, say, get a restaurant there or something. I think we should definitely go to 5.
Our motto is right to
Your on-site
represent.
dispensary.
So 5 acres definitely. Maybe even we should go to like 3. We don't want to
Yeah,
go to.
where does the number come from? Like, is 5 representative of?
Well, I'm just
Well,
thinking
I-
like bigger, lots, because right now it's 20 acres, so there's probably a lot of sub 20 acre lots that are sort of farms that can't really survive, so they become a subdivision like on Hudson Road. Whereas if you could maybe have a accessory restaurant or something like that.
I think 1
acre
acre is too small. I think
definitely
that,
too
when
small.
you think
If you
about
don't-
that.
What'd you say?
I was just saying, I think 1 acre is too small. So
No,
when
yeah.
you think 5.
5 is
that's
probably good.
reasonable.
Yeah,
You know,
Five kind of rules out
Exactly.
residential
Yeah.
lots.
Yeah.
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 Except for some of the big.
Good size ones.
Except for a few of the good sized ones,
So,
so I think 5.
Yeah, a perfect
You know.
example is Cultivate Counseling is what, 7 acres?
So, yeah,
So-
we would be respective of the abutters too, so I
Yeah.
think you don't want to make it too small.
I think 5 is good.
The apple.
And plus, I think this is something that we should get the Ag Commission's input on, because I think they have a good indication as to what size this
Yeah.
would really be beneficial.
So along the 401 Main Street lines, I really think that they got screwed over big time. So right now they have to be a home occupation, which really home occupation, besides the person who lives there, technically, you can only have 2 other people. So, I mean, they can only have 3 employees at this, you know, they have to, have you written that up, the determination yet?
For,
401? Cultivate,
what are you talking about,
the home occupancy.
No, so home occupation goes through Mike, and he doesn't believe right now that it is a home occupation, so.
Right, so,
There's
yeah,
nothing to write up, it just is what it is, and they haven't come forward asking for his determination on that anyway.
no, but the ZBA ruled against Mike's determination that it was agriculture.
They did, so that, yes, that's been written up, the appeal has been written, there's.
So what are they doing now? So they're in appeals, that's how
So
they-
they're in the 20-day appeal process.
Yeah.
The owner, Andrew Lappin, has now appealed to that, so now it's going to land court, it's.
In the state.
Yeah.
And he's gonna win. I don't see how he doesn't
Yeah.
win, personally. So, I personally think, so there's a, in 25, on 21.e, there's a list of what is an acceptable accessory to a farm. I think that we should look at expanding that. And I don't know if we necessarily wanna, you know, say animal therapy, but I think we should expand the list, you know?
I think we should review it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
And
Right now, it's like restaurant, farm stand, maybe there's something else there, but it's very limited.
mhm.
I mean, I think the animal therapy thing is a pretty innovative business, and the EDC went there, and it's a farm, you know? It's a farm with an accessory business. I know that you just think it's the location is the issue, but I think we should look at that, so I definitely think we should open it up. For sure, we should go to 5 acres to allow a smaller farm to have a restaurant or something like that, you know?
Alright, so it sounds like we wanna.
But I don't know that this necessarily needs to be done at the next town meeting, maybe this is in 2 years, because I don't think this is, even though I know 401 Main Street came up and that was a big issue.
I don't think it's an emergency.
I don't think it's an
But we
emergency,
should
this is a
do it.
lot, these are big articles, I
Yeah.
don't think we should be.
No, I agree, we definitely want to prioritize.
Yeah.
And you can't count on every town meeting being like this one.
Yeah.
No, we don't,
though, my friend.
you definitely want to pick your spot.
I think it's very important that we look at that, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking
Agree.
in my head now,
Yeah.
prioritize.
No, I agree, I mean, you want to take, if there's something that isn't a priority and it's controversial, why kill other things? you know?
Yeah.
Along those lines, adult uses.
And why does this keep coming back?
I know, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so this is one of Don's things, yeah, and I've talked to him a bit about it. Under current regulations,
There's no-
there's no, yeah, I mean, you could have,
I don't think it's a
classic pizza and,
I'm not
as
into it.
opposed
I
to
don't
classic
think it's
pizza
a
and pop, sure, I mean, but there's nothing that restricts that. And I guess, my viewpoint is that if we lump that in with the recreational marijuana, just, that.
What do they say in
those two
Congress? I want a clean bill.
Yeah.
It's not a clean bill.
Well, no, they kind
So
of
wait,
both, they
let me
both get dumped
understand
in. So.
With adult uses right now, there's nothing limiting something to
Nothing.
come in here?
Yeah,
Right,
that's
so
correct.
any.
We are naked,
if it's
so
a
to speak.
reason-
So by putting in place adult use bylaw, adult use zoning, we can control,
Where it
we
goes.
would determine where it can go.
So we could just add it to discotheques and the prohibited uses, right? Or is that's just mixed use overlay, right? Where is
That just makes it overlay.
Yeah.
Can't we prohibit it
It's
completely?
older, I think.
I don't believe you.
I'm not
You
sure, I don't think you can. I
Oh,
But
think
you
that,
can, you
know,
can regulate it, that's.
You can
the
write-
whole-
Oh, because like the
That's-
fast food, you can't prohibit it.
Well, so you could say
completely.
adult uses no, right?
You
No,
can't,
no,
you
that's
can't
what I'm
prohibit it, you can regulate it, but you can't prohibit it.
Why, we
so.
say no to other uses, to fast food?
That's just one that, I can go back to Mass General Law, but it's very explicit, under
There's
the
a
uses.
smut lobbying.
A lot of puritanical.
But anyway, so that's why it comes up, that's why it keeps coming up. It is, I know Lancaster tucked their adult entertainment district in an area that's only accessible through Leominster. So they kind of.
Sure they do.
I don't think we have that option, but it is something that, that we are kind of,
I'd hate
we
to
are
muddy the waters with this. I mean,
bare, so to speak, without something.
It's not gonna
It's
happen.
gonna do anything with
Yeah.
this.
I don't
I'm
think so.
not worried about it.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion.
I'm not really
I
worried
just
about it
think it's
either,
dope.
but it's one of those things
keeps
that I
coming.
feel it has to, you
At
have to
some
talk
point,
about
You
it.
gotta-
Yeah.
you gotta do this.
I didn't realize that we
Done.
completely
And again, I
were
don't-
for that.
I don't think it's priority, but I think it's on the list.
I mean, maybe we have some of these these bylaws ready to go, and then if we have a special town meeting,
Yeah.
right, we bring them up there, but not,
I think you're right, it's not a priority.
if there's things
It's not
that
a
we
priority.
really wanna focus on for ATM, then
I mean, it's
Just
almost,
do those.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost like a joke to me, like, I think it would just kind of delegitimize other things.
Yeah.
Personally. I'm not
Well, I
concerned
don't think it
with
would delegitimize, but I think it's low on the priority list.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think there are some other ones that are gonna take a lot of effort that
Yeah.
really are
Yeah.
more important to
Okay,
move forward.
thanks.
I just like that and say, it just gets dumped in with the, wherever we end up allowing recreational marijuana, which is probably the same place that we allow medical marijuana,
And animal therapy.
go yoga.
go yoga, and, and then we're done.
But I think I don't agree with that. I think the marijuana bylaw, I think the town is gonna be split. It may tilt towards favoring allowing it. I mean, and so, but then to lump an adult.
Allowing, so that
Yeah, you don't want to
it would be allowing, well, so there's two parts to the record to marijuana. One is allowing it, and then the other place is where do we allow it?
Yeah.
So if we, and then once we've decided, and we did that with medical marijuana. With,
Because we had to,
because we had to. So the question is, do we just take, effectively take the medical marijuana
Yeah, I mean,
overlay
that's the
or zoning,
zoning of it.
and that becomes the recreational overlay, and then we just have a separate article just to throw adult entertainment into that same area, and then, just let it go from there. But I'm just, that's why it keeps coming up, We do need to deal with it at some point. It's not the highest priority on here, certainly, but we should.
We've talked in the past, not terribly often, but about drive-throughs. So we've talked about fast food, we've talked about drive-throughs a little bit. And maybe it's a concept of exploring allowing drive-throughs, but in kind of an overlay type of an area, so only with respect to some properties.
I always thought maybe there
Where
should be,
traffic
I
mix
thought there
and-
should be a drive-through overlay. I wasn't thinking that the 626 would be included into it, because the residents would go crazy, I think.
Okay.
So if we don't have fast food, what are we driving through for? You drive through to pick up your pizza, drive through to...
Yeah, that's a good question.
Accessory fast food would be internal, so.
Where would Frank put a drive-through?
I don't even know where he would put it, looking at his property. Where would he put it?
I don't know that it's
And
specific.
what would he be serving there? I mean, is it, drive-through to say, order your coffee, drive,
Probably, right? I mean, that's one
Yeah.
use I can think of.
Yeah, but where would it go on the property, let alone,
I don't know.
and is that now dancing much closer into fast food?
Yeah. I mean, as much as
So we allow it there, we allow it at Country Covered too. And they've not come before us, it's just an idea.
Right.
Folks don't like it, then I'm not married to it, but.
I would say it's low on the totem pole there
Okay.
for moving forward.
in Mark's, until we allow fast food, it doesn't make sense to have a drive-through.
Okay.
As much as,
What's it gonna service?
Yeah.
No, like I said, I can think of those two examples.
Yeah.
I think it would service both of them.
I think this would just anger people
Okay,
without benefit.
go to yours.
Yeah.
So we talked about the short-term rental bylaw.
Did we?
Well,
So, for an hour, yeah.
I think we yelled about it.
Pretty much it was more than that.
I looked at this for a bunch of different towns, and, there's a few options. We allow short-term rental as a special permit. We can have a short-term rental overlay. Sometimes it's like residential 1, residential 2, residential 1 would allow it, but that doesn't make sense in Bolton. So it's just whether we allow rentals under 30 days or not.
I think we absolutely should look at this. I mean, it sounds like it's popping up more and more. The fact that there's already
Yeah.
an existing one here, I think this is a priority one.
I do too.
Clearly,
Yeah.
The abutters.
the abutters are concerned about this.
Yeah.
So I think that this.
To be fair and be two-sided, and, I wish he raised his hand at least once. He's concerned about it too. He's a property owner, he's a taxpayer. it should be a two-sided conversation.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And the town might want it, and the town might want it by special permit.
But I think it needs to be
Yeah.
regulated. I
Yeah.
think we need to come up with
Definitely by
how
special
we
permit.
think
Yeah.
it should be done, so it's not this free-for-all. Because right now it's this free-for-all, and we're all struggling with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So, but I think that this is definitely a priority.
I think it's
I
a
totally
priority,
agree.
but do you think it needs to be next town meeting? Because if we put it into perspective here, we're talking about one property in
Yeah,
the
right.
entire
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
this is
one
One property
that we
today.
know of.
Yeah.
one of that we know.
That's
Yeah,
been an
I mean,
issue.
I'll say, like, I read those couple articles, from Cambridge and Newton and the Somerville, and, it all started with, they were doing, a few properties here, and then, it's escalating exponentially
Yeah.
all over.
Okay.
So I feel like if we don't jump on this
All right.
now and kind of get it.
And if that one property is getting a fair amount of use, then another person will be like, well, I'll do it.
Yeah,
Go to-
absolutely. I mean, there's no reason to
Yeah, I
stop
mean, people that,
anyone.
whose houses stay on the market for a long time, like
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a thing that people do.
Yeah.
But I also go back to the fact that we're not a destination town, not really. I mean, I understand
Sure.
the winery, has
Certain
weddings.
times of year.
Well, it's more like
maybe.
wedding season, stuff like that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, but
It's not
again,
Cape
we're
Cod.
not Cape Cod,
No,
we're
I know.
not Boston, we're not,
You're
so.
right. But it might, I think it,
I agree it's not a priority.
But, I mean,
Well-
I've had family come into town and stay at Airbnb, in other towns, so,
Yeah.
you get a lot of that too.
So-
We're a destination because we're here.
I'm not sure.
Because Mark is here.
I'm not sure. if-
Good, right?
I don't know, like you said, I don't know if we could do it for next time, but I think it would be worth looking into.
I definitely
So
would
I
recommend
think it should be toward the
Yeah.
top of the list, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, my-
And I'm not sure special permit is gonna be, do we want, 20 different people coming in for a special permit for it?
Yeah.
Versus what, overlay?
Versus, well,
I think special
I
permit
think it is
is actually
special permit.
appropriate. And
I think it is.
I think it could be Board of Selectmen now too.
It-
It doesn't necessarily have to be planning
yeah,
board.
It's almost a business, yeah.
Yeah.
maybe selectmen, and it may be.
I think it should be special permit because, like I said, if it's a house in the middle of the woods and there's no real neighbors, nobody's gonna have an issue with it, but if it's in a condensed, subdivision, maybe they will, And I think we should respect the neighbors,
No, that's a tough philosophical question. Is it a business or is it a real estate use?
Oh,
Right? It could go.
So do we need the short-term rental bylaw? If we do what I said with, under mercantile, making lodging, by special permit, and what the memorandum says that Airbnb is considered lodging.
Yeah, but
So
again,
maybe that's a way to
just
do
from
it.
Board of Health's
Yeah,
perspective.
that's DP.
So
Mike
maybe,
wasn't wrong. It's just, it's a different, it's another. perspective.
I think he was wrong.
I don't at all.
I don't either. So I think
I think we need to do the research.
we need
and
to
come up
do the
with a-
research, and it still
Yeah.
needs to be a bylaw, because right now our special permit only
Yeah.
applies
Yeah.
to the business.
Yeah, okay.
So we're looking at,
So you need both of them to go side by
yes,
side.
so we'll say, yeah.
So I think
One
we should
and
definitely
two.
look at it, yeah. Moving on, the reduced parking requirements. So this actually, if you look at our parking bylaw, it's kind of insane how much parking is required for businesses.
Oh, really?
What is it like, do you know the numbers?
I can grab them.
Anyway, like,
Yeah.
so, for instance, the Cracker Barrel, they really just need a few spots, like 4 or 5 spots, but, the bylaw would require so much more than that.
For office space, it's 1 square feet of parking for 1 square feet of floor area. For retail, it's 2 square feet of parking for every 1 square feet of
Yeah.
retail space. And then for industrial, I think it's still one, I
Right.
wrote
It's
it
a
on there,
weird way to
101.
define it.
It's
Right.
very weird. It
So it'd be like spaces per thousand.
should be.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. That's cool.
So if you have, say, I don't know, like a 5,000 square foot building, you need 10,000 square feet, 2 times the amount of parking, which just, it doesn't make sense. If it makes sense for the business, why would we require a max, why not, if, I would say consider the lower amount of parking, the better, right? So,
Different towns, sometimes we'll look at that.
the only way I can look at that bylaw and say why they did it is to limit business, or to limit,
No, but I also, just coming from a different angle, if there's a way for us to reduce impervious area,
Right.
I
Right, exactly.
strongly encourage.
Right, it makes
if we
no
could-
sense to have
absolutely,
a
if
minimum
there's-
parking.
Yeah.
If you wanna have no parking, fine, if that's what your business
Well, you still-
requires.
I think, I don't
For
think there's a way with that.
on-street parking, maybe we can
Um,
look into.
Yeah,
But, I mean, as long as you're meeting your ADA requirements
Yeah.
with, you know, that and simplifying the number of parking, I would be all on board with
Yeah.
that. Because, I mean, anything where we can reduce our impact, especially for a town like this, where we don't need to.
So it does that, it reduces that, and for small, well, for 7-Eleven to 713 Main too, they don't really have any parking, and Cracker Barrel doesn't have any parking, so we had like, the owner wanted to look into,
He's
kind of
still-
country.
He's still looking into
Oh,
that.
so he's looking into a country store, but one of his main issues is he doesn't have the parking required by this bylaw.
Well, we don't know that yet. I suggested he go to Board of Selectmen through site plan review and have them weigh in on it.
Can I get a waiver for,
For
reduced parking?
parking, I don't think so.
It's not, okay, that's not mixed up.
So I would like to reduce that, or get rid
I'd
of
be
it, or do
all
whatever.
for
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
I know it's not a
I'm
top
actually gonna
priority
raise it
one, but I'd
again.
absolutely be for that.
Well-
I think it could be a simple one,
Yeah.
potentially, that could, I can't see anyone,
Why would you be against it? It's
Yeah.
stupid. It doesn't make any sense.
I say that, I'm sure there's a reason to
They're-
go against
they're-
it,
yeah,
but.
they're-
I'd like to hear somebody come up and argue why they want more parking, you know, and cement
Yeah.
lots.
These are all, could be, one article.
I don't know.
Right? No?
So then Cracker Barrel and 7-Eleven through 713 Main are pre-existing non-conforming. So any business that wants to come in there has issues. They've been businesses for over 100 years. I see no reason why we can't make those two limited business. I don't see why people would be really against it.
So, I'm sorry, what's that? So you wanna,
So 7-Eleven, 713 Main, which are right to the right of the common.
yeah?
Those two like houses that are about to fall down.
The old antique shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Cracker Barrel, which is the red brick building.
Yeah,
They're-
Across the street.
Yeah, across the street. They're pre-existing non-conforming.
okay.
They're not they're residential, but they're only businesses because they have been businesses.
Okay.
So if they either go abandoned for 2 years, or if somebody wants to kind of have a much different use for them than what it has been, they really can't do it. So I would like to make those two limited business.
Okay.
I think this is gonna be controversial.
Yeah.
I think this is, we should maybe save this for next town meeting.
Well, I mean, we should still talk about it.
Oh, no, I totally agree, we should talk
And
about
why
it.
do you
I
think it'd be
I-
controversial? They've been
Because
businesses
it's
for 100
Main
years.
Street, they're historic old
I
houses.
just get that feeling. I
What's
can't give you a good reason
I-
why,
The seven-
but I
mean,
just get that feeling.
Yeah, the 7-Eleven, 713, like, they seem, is that being willfully neglected? I think people have made that.
So that's the Druids property, which, you know,
That
they just contacted Erica and they want to talk about permitted uses. What did they say?
Yeah, I mean, it's really preliminary at this point, but we're just gonna have a conversation what they.
Like you said, I mean, it's about to fall over.
Yeah. I mean,
The barn is already red
right?
X'd, yeah.
Are the owners looking to rezone it to allow them to do more?
I don't know.
I think they'd be definitely
Yeah,
open to it.
They'd be open to it.
I don't think that they know.
But then
that's
they
a
have much
possibility.
bigger issues, like the septic can't handle anything, you know,
Yeah.
it's pretty much a
Never has
cesspool.
been able to.
It's pretty much a cesspool, there's no public water, you know.
I think they bought it without realizing what they were really buying.
Yeah.
And
But it's
then
same with
they
the
want to dump it
ground.
on the town to solve their problems.
So coming from the EDC perspective, you know, I want those to be limited business, you know, that's what I would, because it would open up more possibilities. I know it would potentially be controversial, but, I mean, you know, you could, I don't know. You need some area where you have business, and those have always been businesses, so I don't know why we couldn't just deem it that.
No, you're right, historically they have been, and they might be able to,
If you look at pictures of the town from 100 years ago, they were businesses,
yeah,
Yeah.
you
it
know?
was an old
Yeah.
country store. Now when you got the common across the street.
And with pre-existing non-conforming, you just have a lot of limitations. So increased lot coverage for pretty much, I kind of divided them out, but, you know, I guess we could start with limited business and business. So at the debate, it came up, somebody said, oh, well, you know, if you want any kind of real impact, you have to get 50% more, you know, or even 100, say even 100% more business area than you have, you know. So what residential zone are you gonna make limited business? You don't even have to do that. Just keep the lot you have and go from 8% to 12%, or just increase the coverage. The fact that if you have a 10-acre lot, you can only have the coverage of 0.8% is kind of ridiculous. And what's the difference of going to 1.2% of your 10-acre lot, you know, versus 0.8? So, I mean, I would say, at the minimum, we should change the 8 to 10 or 12, or, you know.
Is that a big thing that's holding developers back from putting in?
Yeah. He said it was like, it was more like 40 or 50%.
That's what I thought.
That's, one of the developers that was in here was basically
Or no,
saying-
wasn't it Doug? I thought Doug was talking about
I
that.
don't know, someone came in and
Yeah.
basically like, it's 8 or 10% isn't.
Isn't even
enough.
close, yeah.
40
it
or
was-
50%.
Well, so that was that was for the mixed-use village overlay, which I actually put a number to 20. So for the mixed-use village overlay, you know, we've had a couple of people, the Bolton Office Park Condyne, and even 470 Main Street. There's just not enough incentive to do anything with a mixed-use overlay going from 8 to 10%. If you want to have some, diversity in housing, like some apartments and some business, you really got to increase it. I was saying 20%, but maybe it should even be more. But if you want to increase your business zone 50%, you just have to go from 8% to 12%, you know? And you increase your potential revenue by 50% by going from 8% to 12%. I'm not saying everybody would build to that.
Yeah, in theory.
Yeah. So and then industrial coverage. I took some, so I went to, at the EDC, we had a tour of Paragon, and it's pretty amazing. People don't even think of Paragon, like, you know, it's just kind of out of their mind, you know. But if you go in there, it's unbelievable. I mean, would you picture that this is Bolton?
Well,
I mean, is this Bolton to you? And nobody knows it's there. Nobody knows it's there. It's hidden. So what would it matter if you took this, you know, it would be by special permit, of course, but if you increase the industrial zones from, say, 8% to even 20%, and it's hidden in the back of a lot somewhere, you know, and if it's done right with design review board and special permit.
What do we have left for industrially zoned parcels?
There's a couple.
There's a couple.
That end of town?
That end of town that are not built on yet.
Okay.
Do we have setback requirements with regard to stuff like that?
Yeah.
For the industrial, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, if you're saying,
It's
you
the
know,
same as
increase
business.
your
Maybe that's the
percentage.
quid pro quo.
but-
Just go in there, so you look at the front of Paragon, it looks like nothing.
Yeah,
That's a
making
quid
sure you're
pro quo.
separate, I mean, I would look at both of them, it's not just your percentage of saying, okay, yes, you can develop more, but maybe you increase those setbacks a little bit more so that they're really putting it.
Right. So Cobham,
They're keeping more of a buffer.
Yeah, exactly.
so Cobham's going on sale. They have a 35,000 square foot building and an 8,000 square foot building. So actually they're what, you said, 15% coverage?
Well, I had the wrong acreages because
Oh.
I'm talking with the guy from Cobham. It sounds like there was a land dispute, so they actually have more acreage, so
No, they don't.
that's.
But anyway, so they're going for sale, and, you know, we want to market to potential developers that, you know, you can have like the TIF process, which is if you expand on the bill, anything on top of what's currently there, you could give the developer, so over the next 5 years, you get 50% off to try to entice businesses to come in. But if they're already over the coverage, you don't even have that kind of carrot to give to developers.
Okay. We have TIF language currently in our town's code?
No, it's an individual, it's a case by case.
Oh, it is?
It's a case by case deal that you work up and has to go before town meeting.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's not the selectmen that decide, it's the town?
No, it's the town.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. But just in saying all of this, I just think there's a lot of room that we could smartly grow business from. I don't see how somebody would be, if it's 8% to 12%, you know, if you could just, you know, for one particular business, if you're increasing your revenue by 50%, but do you really see a difference between 8 or 12%, you know? I really think we gotta, you know, because everybody was talking about revenue and taxes and this and that. We have to make sacrifices as a town somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think this is an area where we can
But
do
do
it.
you think just
8% is
going
ridiculous.
from 8 to 12 is enough?
I mean, I'm trying to think of something that would pass.
well,
Yeah.
but I mean, let's find numbers that would actually
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
think that's.
yeah, I mean, what was said at candidates night is, and what, you know, we're talking about the split tax rate. And right now, we're at roughly 5% commercial, and the split rate doesn't make sense until you get up to about 20%.
I don't want to split rate anyway.
What do you mean? I'm not.
No, this is from the assessor.
Yeah.
So right now, everything in town is taxed at the same rate.
Yeah.
Every year when the assessors come into the selectmen, they go through, you know, this is what it is, you know, this is what the tax rate is, this is how much of it's commercial, industrial, this is how much is residential. Some towns that have a more commercial property, tax them at a higher,
I
tax
think
commercial at a higher
Clinton
rate.
taxes it at like 30% or 30 cents. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but we have such a small amount of commercial, well, first of all, we don't want to drive any of it out.
Yeah.
Right.
I would.
But it's also, even if we doubled the commercial tax rate, it's pennies on our residential rate. Because we have until it's a significant portion of
or
the
something.
Yeah, the assessors say about 20%.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's where this, kind of,
I would be against the split tax rate. I just
well,
want to.
but that's a whole separate, but that's where the.
We're trying to incentivize businesses.
Trying to increase the.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, trying to increase the, kind of that 5% number to more.
But what I'm saying is you don't do it by the split tax rate. You do it by increasing the coverage of the lots that you currently have.
Well, I mean, but what was for there was rezoning,
tax rate.
rezoning for more commercial, but, but that's kind of where that's kind of where the additional coverage or more commercially zoned or whatever.
Who adjudicates a reduction of the tax rate or a split tax? That's gotta be town.
The selectmen.
Really?
Yep.
Really? Okay. Okay.
So just taking very rough numbers, we're what, 92% residential? So you could say maybe do we get $1 million in taxes from businesses? Maybe, around there?
I don't know.
Just say it's $1 million. If you,
Probably not that much.
I'm just saying, just say it is.
Yeah.
If, you're saying, oh, just going up, 50%, if you go up 50%, $1 million, that's $500,000 a year.
Well, but you're assuming that people are gonna tear.
Of course, it's not gonna happen right away. No, it's not gonna happen, it's just allowing more,
I don't know if that's our big, I think you're right. I think it's an easy solve. I don't think that's gonna drive a lot of economic activity.
Well,
It's Paragon's mostly empty, right? That whole building is full.
Well, it's 300,000 square feet and they have 240,000 filled.
I didn't know so much.
Yeah.
So I think to drive, the commercial side of it home, I think take a sample lot, take the corner at Forbush Mill. What would that look like at the current 8%?
Right.
What could it look like at
12%
or 16% or something?
Yeah.
And that's what people need to be able to visualize.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Start from scratch.
I'm just saying, I don't like the argument of, oh, it's only a few percent, because if you can increase the revenue by 50%, that's a lot of
No,
money.
but I think it would be beneficial to talk, we're already looking to talk to some developers and stuff like that about some of these other areas. I don't want to guess at what a good number would be. I don't have that ability or that knowledge. But if we are serious about changing these percentage rates, which I'm totally fine with looking at, I think it makes sense to get some, maybe it makes sense to go to 20%. Maybe it makes sense just to go to 10%.
Well, if you look at this paper, I put X.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good idea,
I was saying discuss it. I wasn't saying, I'm just throwing 12% as
Yeah.
a 50% increase.
Yeah, but
I
that's
just
not
think
gonna
we
be
should
a
get some
50%
outside
revenue
influence
increase.
about.
Oh, I agree.
coming up
But,
with those numbers.
Village Overlay has done nothing because nobody's using it.
Yeah,
Yes, and nobody
because it
could
has
use
the wrong
this.
percentage numbers.
Yeah.
But I also think we need to look at each lot within those zoning districts, because this may not even be worth discussing in limited business, because all the parcels are small, and they're not gonna be able to build something that large, because they still have to figure out septic and
Yeah.
water and parking.
Yeah.
So it may not be applicable,
I'm just saying I
but
wanna
it may
look at
be
it.
applicable to industrial, because you
Industrial.
still have larger parcels
Yeah.
where that could really come into play.
Right, so if you look at Cobham, right to the east of Cobham, so looking at it to the left, there's a completely undeveloped industrial lot, which is 20 acres.
Something like that.
Really?
Yeah. And then behind Paragon is a bunch of undeveloped industrial lots as well. And I think he did bring up something about,
There's a land dispute, maybe.
yeah.
I have to go to Vermont tomorrow, so I have to leave soon.
We're both on
So,
we're not making decisions tonight, but I want to look at that.
I'm okay with
Yeah.
that. I think that's fine.
And if you could, I could do it too, but if you could study like similar towns and what their coverage is, that would be good.
We only have two things left, and it should take 2 seconds.
Great.
Yeah, the only other thing I might want to add to this list is just the commercial, using commercial property for the phosphid, and just cleaning up that language to prevent that. It's a small nit, but it's,
That's fine.
it's-
I think we did a good job talking about them. We gotta narrow, we gotta
Yeah, really,
prioritize.
this is a big.
It's huge, it's
It's a lot of
enormous,
work.
it's enormous, it's too much.
But I think Mike said at one point that, you know, with the, you know, with what the town wants and the discussion that's happening, we need to do some big things to make a difference, and I think we need to discuss them. And, you know, we have
We
public
need to do a
people.
lot of them. We just need to make sure we're doing not too many.
Yeah.
We need to be able to get them done.
Yeah. Next.
Board reorganization. As your chairman, I won't say too much, I'll let you guys deliberate. I'm happy to be chairman again, I enjoyed it, but I'm happy to yield if other folks want to do it too. I have no strong opinions one way or the other, so talk amongst yourselves.
I
don't want to steal the conversation.
So I see no reason why, you know, I don't think, so the selectman does, you know, they rotate it. And I think that makes sense for them because typically the selectmen are on there for 3 years and it's only a 3-year period. But with the planning board, we've seen over the past 4 years, like how many people actually stay here for 5 years. It's this person's in, this person's out. I think if we adopted a strict rotation, it just wouldn't make sense. And,
Yeah,
Huh?
I agree.
I mean, people are in and people are out, so how many people actually make 5 years, you know?
Well, and just also, I mean, I know that, like, for me, I would want to be on the board for multiple years before I would even consider,
Yeah,
you know, so.
yeah. So I'm perfectly happy keeping Dave as.
I think that sounds great.
I'm fine with that. I think in general, boards do benefit from rotating, so kind of an unofficial term limit, maybe make, 2 years
Well,
and then, or
so-
something, depending on the nature of the rest of the
I
board.
think you saw
but it's-
our last chairman, we kind of had an unofficial term limit. We weren't happy with
What
us.
was it, unofficial term limit or unofficial term coup?
We enacted an unofficial term limit. And, yeah.
I mean, that's the only advantage, kind of forcing a not even necessarily rotation.
You don't have that
but just-
situation.
But just, you're chairman for 1 year and then somebody else takes over. There is no, and.
I'm on the emails with Dave, and there's just so much, I think it is good, there's a lot that goes on for the chairman. I think
Yeah.
1 year, you probably just caught up to pace after 1 year. So I think, every couple of years is probably good, and you're probably gonna be burned out or have other plans the following year.
Well, is there a maximum term? Like
No, there's no
you can't-
term limits.
You
Well,
can't
we-
serve more than 5 years as chair or something?
I mean,
No, right now, there's nothing, so.
I don't think that I really can.
Dave can retire from that position the way it is now.
Do the selectmen have
The
standard, I know it's
I think it's a gentleman's agreement, isn't it?
It's,
I don't think it's written down anywhere.
I'm
So
not
a lot of
sure.
gentlemanness on this.
I don't know if I know too many now. But, so Board of Health does the rotation, and we did that until we had the same people for, got reelected several times, and then there was one person that just couldn't run a meeting to save her life. And she deferred from it, and the other two of us, rotated through, modified the rotation around that. But it's really just an agreement of the board, and I think the same with the selectmen, that's just the convention that they follow.
Yeah.
That being said, I think tomorrow night if Stan was renominated as chair, I think, I don't expect it. but-
I think there's definitely, but I served on a nonprofit board, but there was a new president every year, but you had to be on the board for 7 years before you could become president. So, and that's how it works.
Okay, so we have no chairman.
So that was just a little bit, a little bit different, but the point was each year it was a revolving
Yeah.
board so that, think could evolve and change.
And I think,
That being said, also Selectmen and Board of Health, you also know, next year's,
Yeah.
the chairman.
Oh,
so
exactly.
You're kind of the unofficial vice chairman, so you're
Yeah,
kind
and
of
that's what we had for
coming up
my
to speed on
board
it.
as well.
I think like Dave said, if anybody had an issue with it, fine, but I think, our board has been so, I feel like, open with each other and open with the people that, maybe it would change for different people, but, if we're happy with the person, why not keep the person? I think that's just how I feel. I mean, I would like to do it eventually, but, I think you're doing a great job, so I would nominate you to remain chairman for another year.
For those kind of
I would
words.
second that.
I third that.
to do
All
that.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wow, thanks, guys. Motion carries.
And do we also vote on the vice chairman?
Yep.
We vote on vice. I think this guy's been doing an awesome job, but I feel kind of weird doing a nomination as chairman, so you guys talk.
I
Sure.
think you've been doing a great job as well.
I mean, I would love to do it again, I love being involved.
I'm good with nominating you for vice chairman again.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. This is my request, to look at dates. I had a bunch of conflicts, and I'm actually, this schedule is something that I could stick with, but for, even though it is mine, I made a mistake, May 31st.
I thought you couldn't do the 24th.
I can't, but
jerking us around.
I can easier get out of the 24th. I'm gonna be in a different country on the 31st, so it's not gonna work. Very much not gonna work. So, I'd be into this schedule that Erica typed up, except instead of May 31st, it'd be May 24th.
Go back to the 24th.
But if folks have conflicts, then this is just what works for me.
I'm good with either.
I can do the 24th.
You
We
can
want
do
the 14th and the 21st in June?
I have a
Okay.
potential just kid conflict, but I'll see if I can make it.
Although, when do we do summer? Should there only be one in June, or no?
So typically, I
We can do
thought,
whatever
Why
we
don't
want.
we just see how, yeah,
Do
I know
the
for
14th.
July and August, we usually do.
One.
do one, yeah.
So do we want to figure out our July and August now, just so that way people with vacations can?
We can. I mean, we got the calendar right there. People know their schedules with vacations and things. I don't know.
You know what? I can't think that far out. I
Okay.
think I'm probably,
I was like,
I don't
I
wanna
can, but-
cancel, I don't wanna cancel something that.
I think roughly what we've done is like the second week of July.
That's exactly what I was thinking, is July 12th, and then the second week of August, August
That's
9th.
probably the same thing with June,
Yeah.
frankly. If we get
Yeah.
to the 14th.
Then we don't
we're
need-
saying-
we don't need
14th,
the
we don't need the
21st.
21st.
Yeah.
Right, but maybe we do, so.
Yeah.
Well,
Looking into this schedule, except.
although to get through all of this list.
Yeah, we're probably gonna need to be around.
I think the only
We
thing,
can shorten the list.
the only thing on that list that I really wanna hope that is the cottage overlay, because if there happens to be a special town
That's the
meeting,
most important.
if there happens to be a special
It's
town
up for
meeting,
most.
I would love if Dawn could let it on, or the selectmen would let it on,
Yeah.
because we have active developments going on.
Yeah, you're right, that moratorium could be annual town meeting. There's probably a couple
Yeah,
others that.
We
could
can't
be.
get through we can't get through the marijuana in a few
Right,
months.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we, sorry, are we are
It's
we
gonna be a
moving
fight
May
just to get it
31st back to
for-
the 24th?
That would be my ask, yes.
Okay.
You know, fine with either, so.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. And then do we just want to add July 12th and August 9th on there?
Yeah, I'll just tentatively add it and we can change it later.
So what is it, July?
July
Second
12th,
thing. I think that's what we've done.
July 12th and August 9th.
Okay.
And then we're back on to.
And then it will be September
The second and the
13th.
fourth,
September
27th.
13th, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I will make a motion to adjourn. the-
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
You didn't let me talk about the only thing I really want